My sister cut up my wedding dress with scissors. My parents defended her until her own friends exposed the truth she tried to bury for months. 3 weeks before my wedding, I unlocked my childhood bedroom closet and froze. My dress, the exquisite lace sleeves, the intricate embroidery I had saved months for, had been ripped to ribbons. In a fit of wrath, someone cut it with scissors. My relatives told me I was overly dramatic and that accidents happen. However, moths do not create clean cuts. And deep inside, I knew who did it. I am Nora, a 26-year-old female, and I need to get this off my chest because I can't believe what my family is putting me through right now. My younger sister Maya, 24, hacked up my wedding dress 3 weeks before the wedding, and everyone says I should just get over it. I've always been the responsible one, but Maya has been the center of attention since we were little. My parents, Robert, 53, and Helen, 50, have always made excuses for her actions. When we were growing up, if something went wrong, they would find a way to blame me or make it appear that I was overreacting. When I was 13 and Maya was 11, she ruined an art piece I had been working on for weeks. It was for a school competition, and I had spent hours working on it every day after school. She knocked it over while fleeing through the home, causing it to shatter. Instead of making her apologize or face the consequences, my mother informed me that accidents happen and that I should have stored it somewhere safer. Maya never even apologized. When I was 15, Maya went into my room and stole my cash from babysitting local kids. She spent the money on makeup and clothing. When I found out and confronted her, she cried to our parents. They forced me to split my remaining funds with her since she felt bad that she didn't have as much money as me. They suggested I was being greedy by not sharing with my younger sister. This tendency remained consistent throughout high school. Maya would do something wrong, and I would try to correct it, but our parents would flip it around on me. They claimed I was too hard on her, or that I should be more understanding because she was younger. My father rarely got involved in such instances. He'd sit calmly as my mother defended Maya and chastised me. When I was 18, I moved away for college and rarely returned home except for major holidays. I concentrated on my academics while working part-time to support myself. I graduated with an accounting degree and found work at a small firm. I met my fiancé, Lucas, a 30-year-old male, at work 2 years ago. He is courteous and respectful of me, which is something I had never seen in my family. Lucas proposed last year, and we have scheduled our wedding for October of this year. I was thrilled to have something positive to focus on. I found a lovely vintage garment at a downtown boutique. It was pricey, but I had saved for months to get it. The outfit had beautiful lace sleeves and intricate beadwork. It was ideal, and I felt stunning when I put it on. I kept the outfit in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house because their closet had more space and climate control than my cramped apartment. This proved to be a tremendous error. I should have kept it in my apartment, regardless of how crowded it was. 3 months ago, Maya began dating a new man named Adrian, who is 27 years old. She grew enamored with him and regularly discussed marriage, despite the fact that they had only been together for a short time. She continued indicating that she wanted to be engaged soon. Adrian seems decent enough, but he wasn't prepared for that kind of commitment. Adrian and Maya split up 2 months ago. She was upset, crying for weeks and phoning him regularly. She stayed at our parents' place at this period, and they treated her like a baby. They brought her meals to bed and allowed her skip work for a week. They acted as if she had been through a great tragedy rather than a typical split. During this time, I was preoccupied with wedding preparation and work. I went to my parents' house several times to check on wedding preparations and examine my outfit. Everything seemed normal, and Maya appeared to be improving. 3 weeks ago, I returned home to pick up my dress for the final fitting. I entered my old bedroom and opened the closet. What I saw caused me to stop breathing for a second. My dress was hanging there, but it had been damaged. Someone has slashed through the bodice many times. The sleeves were entirely severed. The beading was ripped off in sections. It appeared that someone had attacked it with scissors in a passion. I stood there for a few minutes, staring at it before moving. Then I went downstairs to find Maya in the kitchen. I asked her what had happened to my outfit. She looked at me blankly and said she knew nothing about it. My parents entered the kitchen, and I showed them what had happened. My father looked stunned, but my mother instantly began making excuses. She speculated that moths may have entered the closet or that there had been an accident. I mentioned that moths do not make clean cuts with scissors. The destruction was obviously purposeful. Maya burst into tears, vowing never to do such a thing again. She argued I was blaming her without proof, which was unfair. My mother put her arm around Maya and told me it was terrible to blame my sister when she was already going through a difficult period. I left the house and went directly to the boutique where I purchased the dress. The owner reviewed the images I took and confirmed that the damage was undoubtedly caused by scissors. She stated that there was no way to fix it, and even if there was, it would be more expensive than purchasing a new dress. She did not have another dress like mine in my size, and with 3 weeks till the wedding, getting anything new was not an option. I spent the following 2 days calling every bridal store in the city to get a replacement dress. Nothing compared to what I had chosen. I eventually found a simple dress at a major store that might work, but it was nothing like what I had envisioned. When I informed my parents what I needed to do, my mother claimed I was overly dramatic. She said the new outfit would be fine, and I should concentrate on the essential things, such as marrying Lucas. She stated it was bad to harbor grudges against relatives, and I needed to forgive Maya. My father contacted me separately and said he believed what I told him about what happened, but he did not want to add to the family's dispute. He stated Maya was going through a difficult time, and perhaps I could be the bigger person and let it go. I inquired openly if they thought Maya had chopped up my dress. My mother stated she didn't know for sure, but even if Maya did it, she wasn't thinking well due to the split. She advised me to have compassion for my sister instead of being upset. My older cousin, Zoe, 32, called me when she learned what occurred. She informed me that Maya had been complaining on social media about how unfair it was that I was able to have a wedding while her relationship fell apart. Zoe claimed Maya had been making remarks about how some people receive everything while others get nothing. I resolved to confront Maya once more. I arrived at my parents' house and found her alone. I told her I knew she had torn my outfit and wanted her to admit it. She glanced at me and denied it again. She claimed I was trying to ruin her life and make her the villain. She said that everyone was already angry with her over Adrian, and that I was now attempting to turn the family against her. When my parents arrived home, Maya raced to them, crying. She informed them that I had cornered her and accused her of terrible things. My mother was furious at me. She said I was bothering Maya and creating unnecessary drama just before my wedding. That was 2 weeks ago, and my family has hardly spoken to me since. They behave as if I'm the problem for not letting things go. Maya has not apologized or expressed regret. She continues to deny doing anything wrong. My wedding is next week, and I'll be wearing a dress that cost a fifth of the original. Every time I look at it, I remember what Maya took from me. This was meant to be one of the greatest periods of my life, but now I spend every day trying not to think about my ruined outfit. Lucas has been encouraging, but he believes I should focus on our future rather than what happened. He believes the garment is not as important as our marriage. I know he's correct, but I can't stop thinking about how my sister purposefully undermined something so important to me. My parents have called several times to ask if I am ready to move on from this. They want me to invite Maya to the wedding party as originally planned. They believe family is more important than a garment, and I'll regret not include her. I haven't decided what to do about Maya attending the wedding yet. Part of me wants to entirely uninvite her, but I know that will result in even more family conflict. The other part of me wants to pretend nothing occurred so that I can have a relaxing wedding day. I understand that this is little in comparison to other family issues, but I can't get over how purposeful this was. Maya understood how much the dress meant to me, but she destroyed it anyhow. Then she lied about it, and my parents blamed me for being furious. Is it terrible that I do not want to forgive her? Should I just let it go and include her at my wedding as if nothing had happened? I really don't know what the appropriate thing to do anymore. Update 1. I wanted to update everyone on what transpired with my wedding and my sister's issue. Thank you to everyone who responded to my first post. Reading your replies helped me know that I wasn't overreacting to what Maya did. My wedding was last Saturday, and it was stunning despite all that transpired. Lucas and I had a fantastic day, and I tried to focus on enjoying our marriage rather than worrying about the clothing problem. The dress I ended up with looked fine, and most people were unaware of the previous clothing drama. I allowed Maya to attend the wedding, but I did not include her in the wedding party. My parents were upset about this, but they didn't push too hard because the wedding was so soon. Maya showed up and behaved normally throughout the ceremony and reception. She even complimented Lucas and me and appeared to be truly happy for us. For a few days following the wedding, I hoped we could get past what had transpired. Perhaps my parents were correct, and I should focus on family peace rather than harboring resentment over the garment. Then something occurred that altered everything. 3 days after the wedding, I was at my parents' house, collecting wedding gifts that had been delivered there. Maya was not at home, and my parents were out conducting errands. I walked up to my old room to retrieve a few items I had left behind. While packing, I knocked over a box under the bed. Some papers and images were scattered around the floor. As I was picking them up, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There were printed screenshots from social media posts. Not just any posts, but those from a private group in which Maya and some of her friends participated. The posts date from about a month before my wedding, right around the time my dress was destroyed. In these posts, Maya mentioned my wedding. She wrote about how unfair it was for me to have this lovely wedding after her relationship with Adrian ended. She stated, "I always got everything I wanted, while she got nothing." She discussed how our parents constantly complimented me for being responsible and successful, while she was viewed as a failure. However, the worst thing was what she wrote about my clothes. She claimed she saw it hanging in the closet, and it made her sick to look at it. She claimed it symbolized everything wrong with our family dynamic. She said that I didn't deserve to have anything so wonderful while her life was falling apart. One of her pals answered, asking what she planned to do about it. Maya wrote back, saying she was weary of being the kind sister who never fought back. She said that it was time for me to experience some disappointment for once. The screenshots were taken 2 days before my garment was destroyed. I sat on my bedroom floor, staring at these documents, for who knows how long. This was confirmation that Maya had intended to destroy my clothing. She hadn't done it in an emotional breakdown, as my parents had claimed. She had considered it and decided to do it carefully. I snapped images of all the screenshots with my phone and then returned the papers to the box. I didn't want Maya to know I found them yet since I needed time to decide what to do. When I came home, I showed Lucas the images. He was surprised and told us to show my parents right away. I wasn't sure what that would accomplish, given that they had already decided to believe Maya over me, despite the lack of evidence on her side. I decided to wait and see whether Maya would eventually speak the truth now that the wedding had ended and everyone was under less pressure. I hoped she'd feel bad and admit what she had done. 2 days later, my mother called to ask how my marriage was doing. During the conversation, she mentioned the outfit dilemma again. She said she was delighted I didn't let it spoil my wedding and hoped I'd be able to forgive Maya soon. She said that harboring animosity was unhealthy and that family bonds were more essential than worldly possessions. I asked her directly if she had ever considered that Maya might be lying about not ruining the clothing. My mother became quiet for a minute before saying she couldn't believe Maya would do something so terrible. She stated that even if Maya did it, she was probably not thinking straight due to her separation. That exchange made me realize that my parents would continue to make excuses for Maya, regardless of the proof I offered. They had already determined that maintaining peace with Maya was more essential than admitting what she had done to me. I called my cousin Zoe to tell her about the screenshots I discovered. She wasn't surprised, saying she knew Maya was behind the garment damage from the start. Zoe claimed she had noticed Maya make disparaging remarks about my wedding plans for months before to the incident. Zoe also told me something I did not know. Apparently Maya had been telling folks that I was being a bridezilla about my wedding and placing unreasonable demands on my family. She had painted herself as the victim of my alleged problematic behavior. This made me realize that Maya had been trying to undermine me for months, not just when she ruined my outfit. She had been crafting a narrative that would make people sympathetic to her yet critical of me. Yesterday, I resolved to approach my family with the proof. I called my parents and requested to meet with them and Maya together. I mentioned that I had something essential to say concerning the wedding dress matter. We met at my folks' home yesterday afternoon. I brought printed copies of the screenshots and arranged them on the kitchen table. I explained how I discovered them and what they revealed about Maya's intentions. When Maya looked at the documents, her face turned white. She claimed that the screenshots were false or taken out of context. She claimed I was attempting to frame her and harm her reputation. My parents appeared uneasy as they went through the posts. My father seemed genuinely surprised and unhappy. My mother continued shaking her head, saying she couldn't believe Maya would write such things. Despite this proof, my mother attempted to minimize what Maya had done. She claimed that the posts indicated that Maya was in a severe mental state and was not thinking straight. She stated that while ruining the outfit was wrong, it was done out of grief rather than malice. Maya started crying and apologized for creating those articles, but she never truly ruined my garment. She claimed she was merely venting her anger online, and someone else must have ripped up the clothing. I pointed out that the timing of her posts corresponded closely to when my outfit was destroyed. I claimed it was too coincidental that she wrote about wanting me to be disappointed, and then my clothing was suddenly ruined 2 days later. My father finally spoke up, saying he believed Maya should accept responsibility for what she had done. He claimed the evidence was plain, and that continuing to deny it was simply making matters worse. This made Maya weep harder, and my mother became defensive. She claimed we were ganging up on Maya and being unfair. She remarked that even if Maya destroyed the outfit, I should forgive her because she was family. For more than an hour, the conversation went in circles. Maya refused to confess what she did, and my mother continued to make excuses for her behavior. My father seemed to be split between demanding justice and keeping the family at peace. Finally, I told them that I couldn't keep having a relationship with Maya if she kept lying about what she'd done. I also stated that I could not respect my parents' decision to choose Maya's comfort over keeping her responsibility for her behavior. I left the house and haven't communicated with any of them since. Lucas believes I made the correct decision, but he is concerned that I will lose my entire family as a result of this circumstance. I'm not sure what happens next. Part of me hopes that viewing the proof will help my parents understand how mistaken they have been about Maya. But I am not waiting for that to happen. Update 2. I've received a lot of messages requesting for another update, so I wanted to let everyone know what's happened since my last post. After I showed my family the screenshots confirming that Maya wrecked my wedding dress, I didn't hear from them for approximately 2 weeks. I wondered if they needed time to assimilate what they'd learnt and figure out how to proceed. Then my father called me. He stated he had thought about everything and agreed with me on what Maya done. He expressed disappointment in her for lying, as well as my mother's continued justifications. My father told me that he had tried to discuss the problem with my mother and Maya several times since our encounter. My mother said that even if Maya damaged the clothing, I should forgive her and go forward. Maya continued to deny having done anything wrong. He stated that he was tired of being dishonest and wants to find a way to make amends with me. He asked if I'd be prepared to meet with him alone so we could discuss without my mother and Maya around. I promised to meet him for coffee last week. When I arrived, he appeared fatigued and older than I remembered. He apologized for not advocating for me more over the years. He stated that he had always known that my mother favored Maya, but he had avoided confronting her because he did not want to generate strife. He told me that after seeing the screenshots, he realized how much damage had been done by constantly prioritizing Maya's sentiments. He expressed pride in how I had built my own life and marriage while receiving little support from family. My father also told me something I had never known before. Apparently Maya has done something similar before. When we were teenagers, she purposefully broke things that belonged to me, but my parents never told me they knew she was to blame. He added that when I was 17, Maya deleted all of the images on my phone because she was upset with me over something. They discovered she'd done it but chose not to tell me because they believed it would cause too much controversy in the family. Learning about this made me understand that my parents had been hiding Maya's conduct for years. They had led me to believe I was insane or overreacting, but in reality, they knew she was targeting me on purpose. My father stated that he regretted not being more honest with me sooner. He expressed a desire to have a relationship with me that was distinct from the situation with my mother and Maya. He asked if we could start meeting more regularly so that we could restore our relationship. I told him I appreciated his apologies, but I wanted to consider what type of relationship we might have going ahead. I expressed my disappointment that he had led me to believe I was mistaken about Maya for so long, despite knowing the truth. A few days later, something unexpected happened. My Aunt Diane, 49, my mother's sister, contacted me. She stated that she had learned about the wedding dress dilemma from other family members and wanted me to know that she supported me. Diane informed me she had always noticed how differently my parents handled Maya and me. She stated she had wanted to say something throughout the years, but she did not believe it was her place to interfere with how my parents raised their children. She stated that when she heard about the outfit being ruined and my parents' reaction, she realized she couldn't remain silent any longer. She called my mother and told her she was wrong to continue making excuses for Maya's actions. According to Diane, my mother became extremely defensive during their chat. My mother told me that I was being overly passionate about a clothing and that family loyalty should take precedence above financial possessions. She said Diane didn't grasp the situation because she didn't have children of her own. Diane claimed she warned my mother that burning someone's wedding dress was a serious error, and lying about it made matters worse. She stated my mother hung up on her and they hadn't spoken since. Diane also informed me that other family members had started discussing the problem. Apparently, word had spread about the screenshots, and numerous relatives questioned how my parents handled the situation. Some individuals argued that Maya should face the repercussions of her actions. This knowledge made me feel validated, but also sad that it had taken something so dramatic for people to realize the long-standing familial dynamic. Last week, Maya sent me a text message. It was the first time she had approached me directly since we met at my parents' place. The message was long and rambling, but the main point was that she apologized for all that had occurred. She claimed she had been in a terrible place following her separation with Adrian and had made some poor mistakes. She said she didn't mean to hurt me and regretted allowing things to get out of control. She asked if we might meet to discuss about mending our relationship. The message did not contain an admission that she had damaged my outfit. She kept using ambiguous language about terrible decisions and mistakes without specifying what she did wrong. I gave Lucas the note, and he pointed out that Maya was still not fully responsible. He stated it sounded like she was trying to regain my trust without confessing the truth about what she did. I chose not to react to Maya's message. I didn't see the sense of meeting with her if she wasn't being honest about what happened. 2 days ago, my mother called me. She stated that she missed me and wanted to work things out. She invited me to come over for supper so we could discuss as a family. I told her I wasn't prepared to sit down with everyone and pretend nothing occurred. I stated that until Maya recognized what she did and my mother stopped making excuses for her, I didn't see how we could go. My mother felt I was difficult and unreasonable. She told me that Maya had given me an apologetic message and I should take it and move on. She claimed keeping grudges was unhealthy and I was harming the entire family by remaining furious. I reminded her that Maya's statement was not an apology because she had yet to admit what she had done wrong. I claimed I couldn't be in a relationship with someone who kept lying to me about something so vital. My mother closed the debate by declaring that I chose to destroy our family over a dress. She expressed her hope that I would come to my senses before it was too late to mend the damage I was making. After I hung up, I was drained by the situation. No matter how much proof I offer or how reasonable I attempt to be, it appears that my mother will always find a way to blame me. Lucas and I have been discussing what to do next. He believes I should stay away from my family until they are ready to acknowledge what happened. He claims I have tried to be fair and reasonable, but they are not willing to meet me halfway. I'm starting to think he's right. I can't keep having the same conversations with folks who refuse to see the reality. Continuing to cope with this drama has a negative impact on my mental health and marriage. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but I'm thinking of taking an extended vacation from communicating with my mother and Maya. My father and I still chat occasionally, and the relationship may be salvageable, but I'm not sure about the rest of my family. Update 3. I wanted to provide one final update to let everyone know how the matter has unfolded. After my last post, I decided to cut off all communication with my mother and Maya. I was weary of having the same chats over and again without making any progress. My father and I spoke periodically, but I stopped replying to texts from anyone else in my family. For nearly a month, everything was quiet. Lucas and I focused on adjusting to married life, and I began to feel less anxious without the regular family conflict. I was beginning to wonder if severing contact was the best option for my well-being. Then 3 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. My cousin Zoe called to tell me about Maya. Maya had apparently started dating a new person named Ethan, a 26-year-old male. Even though they had only been dating for a few weeks, Maya was already discussing marriage and plans for the future, according to Zoe. Zoe claimed that Maya had been continually posting on social media about how happy she was and how Ethan was the ideal man for her. She was acting as if her relationship with Ethan demonstrated that she had moved on from the drama with Adrian and our family. But then Ethan learned what Maya had done to my wedding outfit. Zoe learned from other family members that Ethan had met some of Maya's friends at a party. These were the same friends that were in the private social media group where Maya expressed her desire to disrupt my wedding. One of these acquaintances related the wedding dress event to Ethan, assuming he was already aware of it. When Ethan questioned Maya about it later, she told him the same lie she had told everyone else. She had nothing to do with trashing my outfit. But Ethan was fascinated about the situation and asked further inquiries. Eventually, someone showed him photos of Maya's social media posts proving she had planned to undermine my wedding. When Ethan presented Maya with this evidence, she eventually broke down and revealed what she had done. She told him she cut up my outfit because she was jealous of my happiness and wanted me to be disappointed. Ethan was evidently shocked by Maya's actions and much more troubled by the fact that she had been lying about them for months. He informed her he couldn't be with someone who would intentionally harm a family member and then lie about it. He broke up with Maya the following day. Maya was crushed by the breakup. According to my father, she cried for days and begged Ethan to give her another opportunity. She vowed to apologize to me and make things right. But Ethan stated he couldn't trust her because she had lied to him about something so important. The breakup appeared to be a wake-up call for Maya. For the first time, her acts had consequences that she could not avoid by having my parents excuse her. My father called and told me what had happened. He explained that Maya had finally revealed to him and my mother that she had damaged my garment. She had admitted everything, even how she had planned it ahead of time and then lied about it for months. According to my father, Maya's confession astounded my mother. She had been so sure of Maya's innocence that hearing the facts directly from her was difficult to accept. My father informed me that Maya wanted to call me and apologize for what she had done. He asked whether I'd be willing to hear what she had to say. I told him I needed some time to think about it. Part of me was happy that the truth had finally been revealed, but I was also upset that Maya had to lose a boyfriend before she could be honest about what she'd done. 2 days later, Maya called me. She was crying and couldn't communicate well. She apologized for damaging my clothing and lying about it. She claimed she was jealous and angry, and she took it out on me in the worst way conceivable. She explained that she understood that expressing sorry would not change what she had done, but she wanted me to know that she regretted her actions. She stated losing Ethan made her realize how her actions affected others, and she wanted to be a better person. I listened to what Maya had to say, but I did not offer forgiveness or acceptance. I told her I was glad she was finally telling the truth, but it didn't erase months of lies and manipulation. I said that I wanted time to decide what kind of relationship we could have in the future. Maya inquired whether there was anything she could do to make things right between us. I informed her that the time to make things right had passed. She had several opportunities to be honest, but she decided to lie instead. Following that phone call, my mother called. She apologized for not trusting me about what Maya had done. She said that making excuses for Maya's actions was inappropriate, and she regretted forcing me to show that I was telling the truth. My mother stated that she understood if I wanted time and space from the family. She expressed her desire that we may ultimately re-establish our connection, but she would appreciate any decision I chose. I appreciated my mother's apologies, but I wasn't ready to simply return to normal. Too much had happened to erode our trust. Lucas and I have had extensive discussions about what to do next. He believes I should give my family another chance now that the truth is out and people are apologizing. He thinks that hanging onto my anger will only injure me in the long term. I see his point of view, but I'm not ready to welcome everyone back into my life yet. The fact that Maya had to lose a lover before she told the truth suggests that she was more concerned with protecting herself than doing the right thing. For the time being, I've decided to retain little communication with my family. I will respond to urgent messages and attend large family events as needed, but I will not return to regular family dinners and phone calls. My father and I are steadily mending our relationship, and I believe that it will continue to improve with time. With my mother and Maya, I'm not sure what the future holds. Some may think I'm being overly harsh by not immediately forgiving my family after they apologized, but I need to preserve my own well-being and marriage. I can't go back to being the family member who accepts everyone else's terrible behavior and then pretends everything is normal. Lucas and I are doing well, and are focused on creating our own lives together. We're thinking of buying a house and establishing a family in the following few years. I want to focus my efforts on positive things rather than trying to heal relationships that may not be fixable. I'm not saying I'll never have a close relationship with my family again, but it will be different than before. They will have to gain my trust via their deeds, not simply their words. For the time being, I'm pleased with the distance I've established. It has brought me calm and allowed me to focus on what is truly important in my life. After years of hard work, I graduated alone. When I walked into my parents' home days later, my sister smirked, "Your degree means nothing." 37 missed calls. One text message said, "You owe us an apology." That was how my graduation day concluded. My name is Patrick. I'm 22, and last June was meant to be the most proud day of my life. I had pushed my way through college without much assistance, balancing late-night shifts at a diner, tutoring positions, and a few freelance assignments to keep the lights on in my apartment. My journey came to an end with graduation. The moment I could finally show to myself, and maybe even to my family, that I had accomplished something worth celebrating. But when I stepped across the platform, there was not a single recognized face in the audience. Not my mother, father, or even my grandmother, who had never missed a church service in her life. The rows of vacant chairs in the family section may have easily been spotlights illuminating my loneliness. You see, I have a younger sister named Julia. She's 20, just 2 years younger than me, and she's always been the golden kid. The family's argument has always been that she is sensitive and requires extra care, which in reality meant she got whatever she wanted. At 16, I had new clothes, name-brand shoes, and a car that I wasn't permitted to touch. Even when my bike chain broke and I had to walk 3 miles to school. When she discovered she was pregnant at 19, my parents turned the situation into a fairy tale. She was no longer a scared teenager making rash decisions. She was a glowing young woman who brought the family together. They threw her a lavish baby shower that might have served as a wedding reception. Guess what date they chose? The same day that I graduated. At first I assumed it was simply terrible luck. Perhaps the venue they desired was only available that weekend. Perhaps they didn't understand the dates overlapped. I granted them the benefit of the doubt. I even called my mother a month before graduation to remind her about the conflict. She answered, "Oh honey, we'll figure something out. Maybe we'll split the day." But as the weeks went by, the truth grew more difficult to deny. Julia's baby shower invitations went out, and none of them mentioned my graduation. When I brought it up again, my father said firmly, "Patrick, you'll have plenty of ceremonies in your life, but your sister, this is once in a lifetime." I remember sitting in quiet, squeezing my phone so tightly that I felt it would crack, because how could they say that? As if my accomplishment had no value. It was as if I hadn't worked so hard for 4 years to get to that point. On the morning of graduation, I still had optimism. I kept checking my phone, expecting to hear that they were on their way. Nothing. I gazed around the university parking lot as students and family arrived, bearing bouquets and balloons. Still nothing. By the time my name was called, I had accepted what I knew. They were not arriving. The cheers that erupted for other grads were muffled to my ears. I walked across the stage alone, forced to smile at the dean, and got the diploma that had cost me so many restless nights. My phone buzzed just as I stepped down the steps. I pulled it out, hoping that they had finally sent something supportive. Instead, there was a message from my father. "You owe us an apology." My heart has stopped. My eyes skimmed the screen again, convinced I was misinterpreted, but the words were still there, followed by 37 missed calls. 37. As if I had done something wrong and wanted to go back to them after being abandoned. I couldn't even process it. My friends' families gathered around them with flowers, hugs, and cameras. Meanwhile, I sat on the brink of a fountain, staring at my phone in shock. The text burnt itself into my mind. "What do you apologize for?" "For existing outside of my sister's shadow. For daring to pursue a fraction of recognition that did not revolve around her." I wanted to toss my phone in the water, but instead I pushed it in my pocket and tightened my fists until my knuckles were white. That was the point at which the first significant breach in my relationship with my family appeared. Until then, I had put up with the favoritism, disrespectful comments, and countless explanations. But that text, that arrogance, was the first time I felt the full weight of their perverted priorities. I didn't respond. Not then. Not for the rest of the day. I walked home carrying my diploma and a basic folder. There are no balloons, flowers, or family dinners waiting. Just silence. But deep down, I knew it was merely the beginning. That message was more than simply a stab in the back. It was a declaration. And if they wanted to play this game, I was not going to sit quietly any longer. When I finally went on my phone later that night, there were so many alerts that it felt like my family had been holding a trial without me. My mother's voicemails began with the charming tone she often used when she wanted to shame me. "Patrick, honey, you must understand that this was not about you. We all had to be there for your sister. Family comes first." The following one had a harder edge. "You've embarrassed us by ignoring your father's calls. Julia was crying because you didn't congratulate her. Do you really want to ruin her big day?" By the third message, my father's voice thundered through the speaker. "Pick up your phone and stop acting like a child. You've angered your mother, and you should apologize for your attitude." That term had been haunting me since the ceremony, and seeing it repeated in those texts made something in me twist. I sat on my bed, staring at the blank walls of my apartment, graduation case still unopened on the desk, and reflected on how every significant event in my life had been minimized in the name of family unity. When I obtained my first job at 16, they warned me not to brag because Julia was failing in school. When I was accepted to college, they felt it wasn't fair to discuss it over dinner because Julia hadn't applied anyplace. Now, the day that should have been mine alone has been completely sacrificed for her baby shower. 2 days later, I made the mistake of visiting the family home. I walked in, hoping that seeing them face to face would help them understand how much it hurt, only to see pink balloons still taped to the living room walls, confetti spilled across the carpet, and baby gifts stacked higher than the couch. Julia sat in the recliner like queen, browsing through her phone while my mother fussed over folding small onesies. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," my father exclaimed upon seeing me. He did not smile. He did not congratulate me. He simply crossed his arms and gave me the look that indicated I was already in the wrong. Julia didn't look up when she said, "Did you bring something for the baby? We're still accepting gifts." She spoke as if it were a joke, but her smirk told me she meant every word. My stomach churned. I had spent what little extra money I had on a new suit for graduation because I wanted to appear well when I walked over that stage. I had nothing left for another round of baby shower gifts. I came to talk, I responded calmly, trying to keep my wrath under control. But my mother cut me off before I could explain. Patrick, this attitude of yours is unacceptable. We had to make a choice, and we chose to support your sister because she needed us more. You should have understood that. I stared at her, hoping for her to laugh and claim it was simply a misunderstanding. But she meant it. To her, it was that simple. Julia needed them. As a result, my graduation did not matter. I needed you too, I said softly, more to myself than to them. My father's eyes narrowed. Don't start with that selfish talk. You think walking across a stage compares to bringing a new life into this world. You should be grateful we even came back here to celebrate you now. Give me an award. That was the phrase he used as I looked around the room, which was still decorated for Julia's shower, with no evidence that anybody had recalled my milestone at all. No card, no balloon, no congratulations, just piles of colored wrapping paper and rattles. I recognized then that they did not think I was worth celebrating. I was only a footnote in their story about Julia. Julia finally laid her phone down and grinned at me. Don't sulk. You'll get over it. Besides, you'll probably have another graduation when you go for your master's, right? This one was just practice. Her nonchalant cruelty knocked the wind out of me. She truly believed that my years of effort, of working my way through college debt-free, were nothing more than practice. I went without saying anything else. As I walked to my car, I heard my father call after me, "You're not welcome back until you learn some respect." The door slammed, and that was that. That week I watched as Julia shared pictures from her baby shower on social media. There she stood, shining in a floral outfit, surrounded by piles of presents and happy relatives. Comments poured in from extended family. "So proud of you, Julia. You're going to be a wonderful mother." There was no mention of me or the fact that I had graduated. It was as if I had been completely wiped from the family story. I hoped an aunt or cousin would at least reach out informally, but when I saw them in person a few weeks later at a family cookout, the truth struck me more deeply than any online silence. "You know, Patrick," my uncle laughed, "you really shouldn't have skipped your sister's big day." "That was selfish," my aunt interjected. "Yes, we were all there and it was beautiful. Your absence really cast a shadow. My lack of presence." They made it sound like I had decided to boycott, as if I had purposefully neglected my sister's achievement in order to whine about my own. Nobody believed or cared whether it was the other way around. That night, as I lay awake in my apartment, I felt something inside of me harden. For years, I told myself that if I worked hard enough and achieved enough, my family would eventually notice me. But now I realized that no amount of achievement could ever top Julia's standing on the pedestal they created for her. And as much as it hurt, the knowledge came with a peculiar, frigid clarity. But I wasn't prepared to act yet. Not then. First, I needed to determine how deep their preference would go. A few months after graduation, I maintained my distance. The calls went unanswered. Texts were left as read. Family reunions are respectfully denied. I told myself I was done seeking acceptance and bending just to feel included. But blood ties have a way of drawing you back, especially when guilt pervades every word your parents ever say. By the end of the summer, I was warily approaching reconciliation. My grandma, the only person who had ever shown me unwavering support, had been wondering when I was going to visit. She still saw the best in everyone, and part of me hoped that things had calmed down sufficiently for a new beginning. That weak hope did not last long. One Saturday afternoon, I drove over to the family's residence. The front door was wide open, and laughing poured out onto the porch. Inside, the main room was packed with relatives, pale green balloons, and a big banner that read, "Welcome Baby Shower Round 2. I froze in the doorway. Round 2. Julia had not even given birth yet. Apparently one luxurious shower was insufficient. My parents had agreed to host another. And when I walked into the living room, trying not to betray my disbelief, I spotted something else. Every relative was there, including aunts, uncles, and cousins. People who had skipped my graduation without a second thought were suddenly crammed into couches, balancing paper plates of food and swooning over Julia's belly like she was a celebrity. When my grandmother saw me and rushed over, I forced a grin. "Oh, Patrick, you came. I'm so glad." She hugged me tightly, and for a brief moment, I had a sense of belonging, but it did not last. When my father saw me, his expression stiffened. "You weren't invited," he stated plainly. His voice was quiet, yet it pierced through the room like a dagger. Conversation around us was quiet. "This is for family," he explained, as if I didn't qualify. Something within me snapped at that. But before I could reply, Julia spoke up from her throne of pillows and present bags. "It's fine, Dad. Let him stay. He can make himself useful." She smiled at me. "You can help carry in the gifts from the car. They're heavy, and I'm not supposed to lift anything." The crowd erupted in laughter, some nervous, others sincere. I stood still, with heat building in my chest. Was I the source of entertainment now? Was a laborer hired to transport boxes while everyone else enjoyed the party? I wanted to go out right then, but before I could, my mother stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "Patrick, don't make this harder than it has to be. Your sister is carrying the next generation of this family. It's your duty to support her. Obligatory." That is the word she picked. As if Julia's pregnancy was more important than my diploma, years of work, and complete identity. I clenched my mouth and followed Julia's boyfriend Derek outside onto the driveway. He was resting against a shiny new SUV, a smug expression on his face. "Oh good, you showed up," he remarked, referring to the trunk which was stocked with baby goods such as strollers, car seats and diaper boxes. "We could use the extra hands." "I'd help, but bad back." He tapped his side as if it were an inside joke. I lifted the first box without saying anything, my silence the only defense I had against the rage seething inside. When we returned, the audience exploded with applause. Not for me, of course, but for Julia, who held up another gift while shrieking over small baby things. I positioned the box in the corner and recorded fragments of discussion. "Patrick should really be more supportive. I heard he skipped the first shower out of spite. Poor Julia, having to deal with a jealous brother." Every murmur felt like another brick wall closing in on me. They had not only abandoned me on graduation day, but they had also changed the story to make me the villain. But the breaking point did not occur until dessert. Everyone gathered around as my father tapped a glass with his spoon, signaling for attention. "Before we cut the cake," he told me, "I want to say a few words. Julia, we are so proud of you. You've brought this family together in a way nothing else ever has. You've given us purpose, something to celebrate. You're the reason we're all here today." The room was abuzz with applause. He gave me a look. "And Patrick, well, maybe one day you'll understand what it means to put family above yourself. Until then, we'll keep praying for you." It seemed as if the floor had fallen out from under me. My own father, in front of everyone, reduced me to a selfish disappointment. Gasps and murmurs permeated the room. I could feel every eye on me, waiting for my reaction. My grandmother's hand squeezed around mine. Even her presence couldn't ease the pain. I did not shout. I did not argue. I just stood there, graduation ignored and accomplishments forgotten, as my family cheered the sister who had never pulled a finger to earn anything. And at that point, something inside me changed. The placid resignation I'd maintained for years became harsher. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was a betrayal. I left the second baby shower without saying anything. There are no slammed doors or yelling matches, just peaceful walks out of the home and into the evening air. The sound of laughter and applause followed me down the driveway, muffled as I closed my car door, but still resonated in my mind. As I grasped the steering wheel, I realized I hadn't had a single mouthful of cake. Nevertheless, I felt sick to my stomach. My phone rang on the passenger seat. New texts were already piling up. I didn't have to look to know they were from my parents. Most likely warnings about how disrespectful I had been by leaving early, or how I had embarrassed Julia. I turned off my phone and drove home in silence. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights turned out, staring at the diploma case on my desk. I had not hung it up. I had not even framed it. What was the point? Every time I looked at it, all I could hear was my father's voice stating Julia had given the family a purpose unlike anything else. My triumph was irrelevant to them. I kept thinking about that moment, how everyone's eyes turned toward me, not with pride, but with condemnation, as if I'd committed some horrible evil merely by being outside Julia's spotlight. Days stretched into weeks, and I began withdrawing from everything. I stopped checking family group chats, turned off social media notifications, and spent my evenings traveling aimlessly through the city to avoid sitting in the solitude of my flat. At work, I put on a pleasant grin, but on the inside, I was exhausted. Friends would ask, "So, how was graduation? Did your family come?" And I'd avoid the question, shifting the subject before the knot in my throat could reveal itself. The loneliness penetrated deeply. For so long, I assumed that if I worked hard enough, my family would eventually notice me. Now I know the truth. There was no finish line where I could earn their approval. They'd picked their story, and I didn't fit in. That realization left me hollowed out. Even grocery shopping felt weighty. Walking by young families, I watched parents carry toddlers into trolleys and giggle together. I couldn't quit wondering, why couldn't my parents give me even half of that energy? The worst thing was dealing with my granny. She called me frequently, her voice soothing, and always tried to bridge the distance. "Patrick, your parents don't mean to hurt you," she stated once, but her tone indicated uncertainty. "They're just caught up right now. Julia needs them." She wanted to think the best, but she couldn't disguise her hesitation in her voice anymore. I liked her too much to tell her the whole truth. So I'd simply tell her I was busy or that I needed time. Then I'd sit in the silence of my apartment, caught between missing her warmth and resenting the family she protected. One night, I received a voicemail from my father that went deeper than any of the others. His voice was steady and almost rehearsed. "Patrick, your actions have been unacceptable. We've talked about it, and we can't accept you back until you apologize to your sister and the family. You're isolating yourself, and that's on you. We'll pray you come to your senses." There it was again. Apologize. As if the crime were mine. As if I had abandoned them. I recall sitting on my bed, clutching my phone, my hands shaking. That single word had become a leash, which they wanted me to put around my own neck. But somewhere in the cloud of sorrow, a new concept began to emerge. If I was already the villain in their story, perhaps I didn't need to continue playing the role they had assigned me. Maybe I didn't have to spend my entire life trying to win them over. I wasn't prepared to act yet. I did not have the strength. But late at night, when the flat was silent, I began making mental preparations. Not great plots of vengeance just yet, but modest steps toward reclaiming pieces of myself that had been chipped away over the years. Framing my diploma. Saving money for a place larger than this cramped apartment. Finding people who viewed me for who I was, not as my sister's shadow. It was a tentative resolution, but it was a start. And while I hadn't decided what form it would take, I knew this. If my family expected me to play the role of the forgotten son, they were in for a surprise, because I wasn't going to be forgotten forever. The transition did not occur overnight. At first it was modest and nearly imperceptible, like planting seeds in soil I wasn't sure would grow. I started with my diploma. On Saturday morning, I took it to a frame shop. The woman behind the desk assisted me in selecting a simple black frame with a matte finish. When I hung it above my desk, it made the flat feel less empty. That piece of paper served as more than simply a reminder of my family's absence. It was testimony of my perseverance and grit. Every late-night shift, every article I'd written at 3 a.m., every sacrifice I'd made, it was all there, staring at me. And it was mine. Work was the next turning point. I'd only been in my entry-level job for a few months, primarily doing menial work and keeping my head down. But once I stopped focusing my efforts on pleasing my family, I found myself leaning into my work. I volunteered for projects that no one else desired. I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to learn the specifics. My boss noticed. One afternoon she approached me and said, "Patrick, I see how hard you're working. How would you feel about leading the next project proposal?" My heart raced. It was not glamorous. It involved spreadsheets and research, but it gave me the opportunity to show myself on my own terms. I poured myself into the project. While my family was busy organizing gender reveal parties and newborn photo shoots, I was staying late at work, studying presentation techniques on YouTube, and perfecting my pitch until I could repeat it in my sleep. When it came time to speak, I stood in front of a panel of executives, palms sweating but voice firm. I put out every detail with confidence that I didn't realize I had. After I finished, the room became silent for a moment before the department head stated, "That's the most thorough proposal we've seen from a junior associate in years." My supervisor smiled, and for the first time in a long time I felt seen. Truly witnessed. The acknowledgement came with a tiny increase, which helped to alleviate the persistent tension that had been building up in my chest for years. With that money, I improved my residence. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom with more light and a kitchen that did not feel like a closet. I painted the walls myself, stocked the shelves with literature I'd always wanted to read, and purchased a good coffee maker. Slowly, the room began to reflect me, rather than serve as a reminder of my shortcomings. However, the most significant transformation occurred on a societal level. I had always been guarded, unwilling to let people in after years of being kicked out at home. However, as my confidence grew at work, I found myself opening up more. I began saying yes to after-work drinks, attending trivia nights with colleagues, and even allowing a few friendships to develop into something more. Alex, a co-worker, became a good buddy. He was the first person I ever recounted the entire tale to. The missed graduation, the baby shower, and the text from my father. I expected him to look at me as if I was exaggerating, but instead he shook his head and said, "Man, that's brutal. No wonder you've been carrying that weight. But listen, your worth isn't tied to them. You're building something real, and they can't take it away." These words stayed with me. For years I had waited for my family to validate me. But someone outside of that circle reminded me that I did not need their approval to exist. And the more I focused on my own improvement, the clearer it became. I wasn't powerless anymore. I became more aware of the discrepancy when I occasionally checked in on family via social media. Julia's baby showers, nursery, and posts on the miracle of parenthood were all over social media. Cracks appeared behind the slick coating. Derek, her boyfriend, appeared less present with each passing month. Rumors arose among extended family members about financial problems and confrontations behind closed doors. Meanwhile, my life was steadily improving. I wasn't wealthy. I was not famous. But I had steadiness. And I'd earned it. The true turning point occurred one evening, when my employer summoned me back to her office. "Patrick," she added, "I want you to consider applying for the management training program. It's competitive, but I think you'd be a strong candidate." My chest constricted with surprise. Just a year ago, I was the youngster sitting alone at graduation, staring at a text demanding an apology. Someone has now recognized my leadership potential. Someone thought I could get into a position of authority. That night, I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat down at my desk beneath the framed diploma, and looked over the application form. For the first time, I wasn't concerned about whether my parents would approve, or if Julia would overshadow me. I was reflecting on what I desired and how far I had come. The power I had previously craved for in my family's eyes was beginning to manifest in mine. Even still, the past remained. Their words lingered, harsh and weighty. Even though I was constructing a life without them, I knew this story was far from over. Because the relatives that had abandoned me will eventually come knocking again. And when they did, they discovered someone completely different from the boy they had rejected. It was almost uncanny how the tides began to change. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for bits of approval. I was being sought out. My name began to circulate in higher-level groups at work. Not only for the management program, but also for my natural ability to organize chaos. When a project fell apart, I became the go-to person, the calm hand that everyone relied on as deadlines approached. That reputation carried weight, and with it, influence. When I was officially admitted into the management training program, it was like entering a completely new world: leadership seminars, executive mentorship, and strategy sessions. Doors that had previously felt bolted shut now swung open. Valerie, a sharp but fair-minded CEO, was particularly interested in me. She approached me after a presentation one day and said, "Patrick, you have something people can't fake: resilience. Don't waste it. Learn how to use it." Her words became a mantra. I pushed myself into learning not only how to manage people, but also how to handle politics, read the room, and think long-term. And slowly, I began to recognize how those same skills could be used outside of work. Because my family has not vanished. They were still present in the background, living their filtered version of reality online. Julia had her baby, a boy called Noah, and the family celebrated as if it were the second coming. My newsfeed were swamped with photos of my parents beaming as grandparents, Julia draped in pastel blankets with her miraculous child, and messages about how family is everything. Family is everything. I nearly laughed when I first saw it. They had entirely rewritten the narrative, such that anyone looking in from the outside would believe we were the epitome of harmony. However, reality tends to leak through crevices. My cousin, with whom I was still on excellent terms, approached me over coffee one afternoon. "Patrick, I don't know if you know this," she said, leaning over the dinner table, "but your parents have been asking around about you. They say you're distant, that you've lost your way. They're trying to make it sound like you're the problem." My jaw constricted. Of course they were. They couldn't confess they'd abandoned me, so they made up a new scenario in which I abandoned them. That same cousin also casually mentioned something else. "Julia and Derek are having money problems. He's not working steadily, and the baby expenses are piling up. Your parents are stressed. They've been covering more than they expected." I sat back in my chair, my coffee tasted harsher. Money issues. dependence. Cracks in the gold pedestal. For years I had been the one scraping by, the one they dismissed as a burden while they lavished resources on Julia's every need. With their chosen star under strain, the roles began to alter. And unlike them, I had constructed something solid brick by brick without their assistance. Around the same time, my employer offered me the opportunity to manage a high-profile account. It wasn't simply a promotion, it came with a sizable raise and, more crucially, visibility. If I pulled it off, I'd establish my reputation not only in my department, but throughout the organization. I worked harder than ever before, putting every ounce of pain and rejection into laser focus. When the project was successful and brought in record numbers, I was offered a permanent management job. My pay has doubled. My name began appearing in company newsletters. For the first time, I was not just surviving, but thriving. I moved into a modern new apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the downtown skyline. I bought an automobile that would start on the first try every morning. When I walked into meetings, people listened. I was no longer invisible. That's when my mother's first text arrived. "Patrick, love, it has been too long. We'd love for you to stop over and see Noah. He's growing so quickly, sweetie." The same mother who told me I needed to apologize was now using her grandchild as bait. A week later, my father called. I didn't respond, but the message had that calm, controlling tone that I was too familiar with. "Patrick, it is time to let go of the past. Your family needs you. Noah needs his uncle." These words stayed with me. Your family needs you. For years I needed them. Yet they turned me down. The roles had suddenly reversed. And as much as it ached, it also ignited a fire within me because, for the first time in my life, I wasn't on the losing end. I was in a position of strength. They needed me. And that realization, that wonderful, dangerous realization, is when the concept of payback began to emerge. I didn't respond to their texts right away. In reality, I let weeks pass. Every day I kept my phone on mute. I ignored every text message and deleted every voicemail without listening. It was not about being petty. It was all about timing. They weren't in control for the first time, and I wanted them to feel it slowly and fully. Then one afternoon, I saw my cousin again. She smirked when she spotted me. "You know, Julia's been asking about you a lot. Apparently she and Derek are in a bad spot financially. Your parents are covering their rent now, and with the baby, they're drowning." She paused, dropping her voice. "They keep saying, if only Patrick would step up." Step up. That phrase stuck with me. For years I had been ignored, ridiculed, and mocked. Now that their golden girl was struggling, I was supposed to take responsibility. Not this time. That weekend, I dressed sharply. A sleek blue suit, polished shoes, the kind of style that made people sit up straight in their chairs when you went into a room. I drove my new automobile, which shined in the light, to my parents' house. I hadn't been back since the second baby shower, and when I drew up to the side of the same driveway where I'd earlier been assigned to haul boxes, I was blasted with a flashback. I rang the doorbell, and my mother's face lighted up. "Patrick, oh sweetheart, you came." She drew me into an embrace, but it felt overdone, too sweet, as if she had practiced it in the mirror. My father was in the living room with Noah in his arms, and Julia sitting on the couch. The baby gurgled cheerfully, the sole innocent in the room. "Look at you," my father exclaimed, admiring the outfit and the watch on my wrist. His voice was full of the pride and disdain I had grown up with. "Doing well, huh?" "Better than well," I said evenly, taking my seat. I paused for a bit before continuing. "I heard you've been having difficulties." Julia's jaw tightened at hearing the word. "If you're here to rub it in, don't bother." My mother rushed to smooth things over. "What your sister means is things have been difficult. Derek's hours were cut, and the baby's expenses are overwhelming. We thought maybe as family, you could help." There it was. The request. They hadn't even attempted to conceal it. I leaned back, folded my hands, and looked each one in the eyes. "You want my help?" I inquired slowly. "The same family who skipped my graduation. The same family who told me I owed them an apology while I sat alone on the biggest day of my life. The same family who made me feel like I wasn't welcome in my own home." The room went silent. Julia's cheeks reddened, and my father's gaze narrowed. "That was the past," he stated firmly. "We need to move forward. Family is about sacrifice." "Funny," I replied with a slight smile. "Because I sacrificed for years, and all I ever got was silence. Now you want my support? Why? Because the golden child isn't shining so brightly anymore? My mom let out a gasp. Julia shot to her feet. How dare you? She demanded. You don't know what it's like to raise a child. You're right, I responded, rising up. But I do know what it's like to walk across a stage alone, because my family decided a baby shower was more important than my future. I know what it's like to be erased from every conversation because my sister needed all the attention. And I know what it's like to build a life from nothing, without a dime or an ounce of encouragement from any of you. Their expressions shifted: anger, embarrassment, and astonishment. I allowed the weight of my words sink in before administering the final blow. You made your choice that day. You chose who mattered, and now I'm making mine. I slid a card on the coffee table. Not a check, not cash. Just my business card, sleek and simple, with my new title imprinted on it. If you ever want to treat me like family again, start by acknowledging who I am now. Not the forgotten son, not the backup plan, but the person who stood on his own when you all turned away. Then I walked out. I did not yell. I did not bang the door. I just left in the same way I did years ago. However, this time I was not broken. I was in control. The following day, I checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls. Messages ranged from appealing to enraged. One from my mother stated, "Patrick, please. Your sister is in tears. We did not intend to hurt you. Can't you help us just once?" Another from my father remarked, "You're being selfish again." Family is about sharing and not harboring grudges. But I didn't respond. For the first time, their plight didn't feel like a burden I had to bear. It seemed like justice. The weeks after my visit to their house were among the oddest of my life. For years, I was the one pursuing scraps of attention. The person calling, apologizing, and pleading to be seen. My phone would not stop buzzing. My parents fluctuated between guilt and wrath. My mother's communications were filled with heartbreaking pleas. "Patrick, we just want to start over. Noah needs his uncle." Meanwhile, my father issued strong commands. "Enough games. Stand up for your family." Julia, on the other hand, was pure poison. One text read, "You think you're better than me now? Don't forget who sacrificed everything so you could live a regular life." I stared at that one for a long time, wondering what universe she was living in, because I couldn't recall her giving up anything for me. I disregarded them all. Not out of spite anymore, but because I knew I owed them nothing. Every call I declined, every message I left unanswered, was a silent statement. I was no longer theirs to control. Even I was surprised by how badly the fallout hit. My cousin contacted me one night, her voice full of secondhand drama. "Your parents are furious," she stated. "They informed everyone that you declined to aid, and now people are asking questions." Aunt Ruth just replied, "Well, maybe if you treated Patrick better, he'd want to help." She chuckled. "It's unraveling. Everyone is seeing it now." Then came the shocker. Derek, my sister's boyfriend, has packed everything and departed. There's no warning, not a long goodbye, just left. Word quickly spread. He'd been drowning under the pressure, resentful of the expectations. And one day, he just walked out, leaving Julia with a newborn and a stack of unpaid bills. My parents attempted to keep it secret at first, but something like that can only be hidden for so long. The whispers quickly transformed into pitying stares during church, and the pedestal Julia had been set on wobbled until it toppled to the floor. That was when the desperation peaked. My father showed up at my office. He didn't get past the lobby. Security called to let me know that a man was downstairs and insisted on speaking with me. I instructed them to send him away. Later, I discovered that he had stood there for nearly an hour, red-faced and pacing before storming away. That night, he left me a message that began with wrath and finished with a cracking voice. "Patrick, we only need your aid." But I didn't give in. Help wasn't what they wanted. They desired control. The old dynamic in which I was the neglected son, constantly grasping while they tugged the strings. And that individual ceased to exist. Months passed, and my life only grew steadier. I was promoted again, and my projects gained recognition beyond the organization. I traveled for the first time, standing in airports with a passport in hand, liberated in ways I never imagined possible. I filled my flat with laughter from friends who truly came out for me and praised my victories without envy. Every step forward seemed like retrieving another aspect of the boy they had worked so hard to forget. Meanwhile, the family that once mocked my hardships began to crumble. Julia moved back home with my parents, her independence gone, her idyllic life reduced to strained silence and financial distress. My parents, who used to brag about their united family, suddenly faced unpleasant inquiries about why their son seldom came over, why their daughter appeared so bitter, and why their lives looked so different from the rosy picture they'd painted. The final nail was my grandmother's birthday. She was the only one I consented to see, so I reserved a small private dining room at a restaurant she enjoyed. When I came, she grabbed me tightly, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "I'm so proud of you." That was enough for me. But as the evening progressed, I noticed my parents and Julia enter the restaurant. They had not been invited. They must have discovered out from someone else. They noticed me across the room, myself in a fitted suit, friends and co-workers at my side, and my grandma beaming with pride at the celebration I'd thrown. They attempted to approach, but the maitre d' stopped them at the door, telling them that it was a private occasion. My mother called out, her voice trembling, "Patrick, please let us in. We're family." The room became quiet. Everyone looked at me. I stood and proceeded to the doorway, looking at them one last time. Their expressions were desperate, begging, and devoid of the arrogance they had once worn so proudly. "Family," I replied gently. "Family doesn't abandon you when you need them most. Family doesn't erase you. You made your choice, and now I've made mine." I returned to the dining room, and the maitre d' closed the door behind me. My grandmother grabbed for my hand, her grin unwavering. The restaurant's noise vanished, leaving behind the warmth of people who actually cared. In that instant, I recognized the truth. I hadn't lost a family, I'd built one. And the old ones, the ones who demanded apologies and grinned as I stood alone, were left outside, banging on a door that would not open. "How are you paying for this place?" My sister mocked me at dinner. Until the waiter revealed the truth that left my entire family in shock. It all began 5 years ago when I walked away from all my family expected of me. They always evaluated my decisions, dismissing my culinary ambitions as beneath our family name. They had no idea that today, as they assemble at Maison, one of the city's most elite restaurants, to celebrate my sister Vivian's engagement, they would be confronted with how much had changed. My tummy tightens as I adjust my plain black dress. Sometimes the most difficult reservations to make are about your own past. Growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, being a Mitchell meant something special. We were more than just wealthy. We left a legacy. My parents, Elizabeth and Charles Mitchell, based their identities on status markers like the correct address, schools, and occupations. Our enormous colonial home hosted fundraisers at which my mother paraded us children around like accessories, her pride proportional to how well we fit into her ideal of prosperity. "The Mitchell children are destined for greatness," she'd tell her acquaintances at garden parties, my father nodding in agreement behind his whiskey glass. "Vivian has already decided on Yale Law, and Daniel's mathematical abilities are really promising. He'll make an excellent investment banker." When guests looked at me, the middle kid, my mother's smile tightened. "Draw has creative inclinations. She'll find her way." What she meant was that I was the family's letdown. While Vivian excelled at debate club and Daniel won math competitions, I spent countless hours in our housekeeper Maria's domain, the kitchen. Maria, a warm-hearted woman from Greece, saw something in me that my parents did not. Genuine passion. "You have the hands for this work," she'd add as I assisted her in kneading bread or neatly dicing vegetables. "The way you taste, the way you smell, you understand food in your soul." By the age of 13, I started developing my own recipes. When my parents went on vacation, I began holding underground dinner parties for my pals at the age of 16. My kitchen became my sanctuary, where I felt most completely myself. "Cooking, a servant's work," my father remarked when I mentioned culinary school during my junior year of high school. "Mitchells hire chefs, they don't become them." To pacify them, I applied to business schools and eventually enrolled at Dartmouth, where my father and grandfather had gone. Even yet, I found methods to pursue my genuine passion by taking food science electives and nutrition classes that I could rationalize as complementary to business administration. I launched an underground supper club in my apartment, charging students for inventive 5-course dinners to help support my covert weekend courses with local cooks. My double life lasted until graduate school. I was 6 months into an MBA program that was making me really miserable when Chef Julien Marchand, a French culinary expert with 3 Michelin stars, came to campus for a lecture series. He approached me after sampling my meal at a university event during which I had assisted with catering. "Who taught you to make a reduction like this?" he said, his accent strong but his gaze earnest. "I taught myself," I said. "From books, videos, and experimenting." He handed me his card. "You're wasting your talent here. Come to my kitchen in New York." and I'll make you great." That night, everything changed. 2 weeks later, I stood in my parents' beautiful living room, explaining why I was leaving out of my MBA program to go to culinary school. The quiet after my announcement was deafening. "This is absolutely unacceptable," my father eventually remarked, his voice dangerously low. "We've invested everything in your education." "Everything except respect for what I actually want," was my reply. My mother's expression stiffened. "If you pursue this hobby, you do so without our financial or other support." Vivian, who had just returned from a year of law school, chuckled coldly. "Always the rebel. Let's see how long you last cooking for minimum wage." Daniel, who already works at a prestigious financial firm, simply seemed embarrassed for me. I departed that night with only my personal savings and a modest suitcase. The next 5 years were the hardest I'd ever known, working 18-hour days, living in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates, and taking out loans for culinary school. But with Chef Julian's guidance, I thrived. The kitchen's intensity, discipline, and inventiveness nourished me in ways that business school never could. Then came the opportunity to change everything. An investor who tried my food at one of Julian's parties approached me with a business pitch. Maison launched 2 years ago, with me as executive chef and partial owner. 6 months later, I bought out my partners and became single proprietor. The irony was not lost on me that I had ended up using my business education, but not in the way my parents had intended. Maison soon became the most difficult reservation to get in the city. Last month, Food and Wine magazine included us in their Future of American Cuisine issue. Throughout this, I kept my distance from my family, occasional awkward phone calls with my mother, holiday cards, but nothing serious. They knew I was doing something with food, but they didn't know how successful I was. I chose to keep it that way. I desired recognition for my successes on my own terms, not as a means of eventually gaining their favor. So, when the embossed invitation to Vivian's engagement supper arrived at my place, I was astonished. Even more startling was the location. My own eatery. Of course, they couldn't have known it was mine. They presumably chose it because it was unique and magnificent, ideal for demonstrating their status. After several days of consideration, I decided to accept, not for affirmation, but possibly to finally close a chapter. 5 years of distance had provided me with perspective. I felt confident enough in my success to face them without breaking under their criticism. What I hadn't imagined was how it would feel to watch them dine in my restaurant and criticize the dishes I had worked so hard to create. But that was exactly what awaited me when I pushed open the huge glass doors of Maison that evening, ready to play the role of the struggling black sheep for the final time. As I came through the doors, the familiar aroma of Maison engulfed me: saffron, reduced wine, and the faint perfume of fresh herbs, which I insisted on having delivered twice a day. Usually, this perfume grounded me and reminded me of everything I'd accomplished. Tonight, it only made me more anxious. I had carefully chosen my clothes: a modest black dress by Diane von Furstenberg, embellished with a single strand of pearls belonging to my grandmother. My status-conscious relatives would most likely misinterpret my understated elegance as an attempt to make do with inadequate resources. My hair was pulled back into a tidy chignon, which they would likely read as me being unable to afford good styling. Adrian, my most senior server, noticed me right away, his eyes widening slightly in surprise. I rarely entered via the front door as a guest. I gave him a delicate shake of my head and mouthed, "Not yet." He nodded silently and resumed his tasks. I could see them from the entryway. They'd requested the middle table. My mother in Chanel, and my father examining the wine list with intense focus. Vivian wore what appeared to be new season Gucci. Next to her sat a man I didn't recognize, possibly Olivia, with slicked back hair and a watch that caught the light whenever he moved his wrist. Daniel and his wife Callista completed the picture, dressed in business clothing as if they had just returned from an important conference. Celeste, my hostess, she approached with a friendly smile. "Good evening, miss." She stopped herself just in time. "Your party is already seated. May I show you to their table?" "Thank you, Celeste," I said quietly, appreciating her caution. As we neared, my mother recognized me, her eyes making a swift assessment that I knew from childhood. A head-to-toe scan determined the approximate value of my attractiveness, and found it lacking. "Dar," she replied, rising to air-kiss my cheek. "You finally arrived. We were beginning to wonder." "I'm exactly on time, Mother," I said, checking my watch. 7 on the dot. My father stood and gave me a stiff hug, followed by an awkward pat on the back. "You look healthy," he said, implying that I hadn't kept up the borderline unhealthy slenderness valued in our social circles. Vivian barely stood, offering me her cheek to kiss. "This is Olivia. she said, as her fiancé rose and extended his hand. His grasp was overly tight, a power move I recognized from numerous business meetings. Princeton undergrad, Wharton MBA, he explained. Just made junior partner at Goldman. There's no nice to meet you, or, I've heard about you, simply credentials and status. The Mitchells enjoy language. Daniel gave me a more sincere hello, but his wife Callista's grin appeared strained. I subsequently learnt she had been assigned with locating this extremely exclusive restaurant for tonight's dinner, and she was concerned about whether it would match everyone's expectations. Well, my mother began as I took the last unoccupied seat. We've already ordered champagne. I hope that's okay. I noted they had chosen the most costly option on our list. Showy but not reckless. Typical. The restaurant hummed with the enthusiasm I had worked so hard to create. The lighting was dark enough for intimacy, and bright enough to highlight each dish's artistic plating. The sound level struck the perfect blend between conversation and seclusion. The tables were perfectly spaced, close enough to produce energy while remaining far enough apart for discretion. Every aspect was my choice, from the linen weight to the custom-designed chairs that encouraged diners to stay without being uncomfortable. I saw the staff's subtle reactions when they learned I was seated with customers. Marco, our sommelier, attracted my attention as he approached with the champagne. The tiniest rise of his brow inquired whether I wanted him to acknowledge me. I gave an inconspicuous headshake. Excellent choice, he told my father instead, presenting the bottle with practiced elegance before starting to pour. We're celebrating an engagement, my father added unnecessarily, obviously looking for special treatment. Congratulations, Marco said effortlessly. Maison is honored to host such a special occasion. I'm surprised you managed to make a reservation, I responded casually. I've heard it's quite difficult. Olivia leaned forward. I know people, he said with a wink. I had to repress an eye roll since he was so smug, called in a favor with a client who's friendly with the management. I was chewing my lips. The client was most likely Craig Winters, one of our frequent investors who occasionally requested tables for business associates. I made a mental note to talk to him about Olivia. Well, aren't you resourceful? I inquired, extending my champagne flute to Vivian and Olivia. A perfect match and a brilliant future, my father said. We clinked glasses, and I took a little sip, observing that the champagne was poured at the exact temperature I had instructed my staff to keep. So, my mother said, setting down her glass and focusing her gaze on me. Tell us what you've been up to these past few years. You've been so mysterious. The table's attention moved to me. 5 pairs of eyes evaluating and preparing to evaluate. I've been working in food, I answered simply. Learning, growing. Are you still in that cooking phase? Vivian sighed, as if I'd admitted to a dreadful addiction. I thought surely by now you'd have moved on to something more substantial. Not everyone can handle the corporate path, Daniel added, making his argument sound like criticism. Olivia looked perplexed. What exactly do you do? Line cook, catering, and various roles, I replied vaguely. I've worn many hats. Well, we're just glad you're able to support yourself, my mother remarked, with a phony graciousness I recognized. Though we've always said our door is open if things get too challenging. I observed Ivy, one of our most skilled servers, approaching with the amuse-bouche, which was a bite-sized sphere of compressed watermelon covered with fermented black garlic and a microgreen I had obtained from a specialized urban farm. Compliments of the kitchen, she said, delicately setting one before each diner. Her eyes caught mine briefly, a spark of loyalty before she returned to professional mode. Is this all? Vivian inquired, looking at the single taste with despair. I'm hungry. This is an amuse-bouche, I explained. A palate opener. The meal hasn't actually started yet. I know what an amuse-bouche is, duh, she murmured. I'm not culturally illiterate just because I chose law instead of playing with food. I watched as they all tried my creation. My mother took the tiniest possible bite, always mindful of calories. My father shoved the entire item into his mouth, barely hesitating to taste it. Daniel and Callista appeared to enjoy it, although Olivia made a show of evaluating the flavors like a wine connoisseur, using culinary phrases that made no sense. Only Vivian left hers undisturbed. I don't do raw garlic, she stated. Though the black garlic was far from raw, it had been fermented for 60 days in a temperature-controlled atmosphere, a technique I had honed over 3 years of experimentation. As our server cleared the dishes, I noticed a look of sadness in her eyes at Vivian's untouched handiwork. In that moment, I felt protective. Not of myself, but of my employees, who took great pride in their work. I had created Maison not only as a restaurant, but also as a family, united by shared enthusiasm rather than DNA. The evening had only barely begun, but I could already feel the old dynamic settling in. I was the outsider, the one who had chosen the incorrect route and wanted to justify my decisions. But unlike Draw 5 years before, I now sat at this table with a secret strength. One that would eventually throw the entire relationship on its head. So, tell us about the wedding plans, I began, purposefully diverting my gaze back to Vivian as our next course arrived. A delicate combination of homegrown tomatoes, homemade ricotta, and basil oil that took me months to master. Vivian brightened instantly. We've booked St. Thomas Church, of course. Reception at the plaza for 100 guests, though Mother thinks we should cut it to 350. The guest list is getting unwieldy, my mother interjected. The Astor Williams aren't speaking to the Bennetts since that unfortunate yacht incident, so we can't seat them in the same section. I restrained a smile. The seriousness with which they analyze these societal calculations never ceased to astound me. 400 seems excessive, I ventured, taking a taste of the tomato dish. Olivia leaned forwards. It's networking, not just celebration. Half those invitations are relationship investments. Exactly, my father agreed. Olivia understands the social capital aspect. A wedding of this caliber opens doors. And what about you, Dar? Vivian inquired, her tone suddenly stern. Any prospects on your horizon, or are you still too busy with your cooking? I observed she had scarcely touched her lunch, moving the heirloom tomatoes around her dish with apparent disdain. I'm focused on my career right now, I replied simply. Career? Daniel said with a slight laugh. Is that what we're calling it? My mom jumped in. Dar dear, surely by 29 you're thinking about settling down. There's that lovely son of Elizabeth Whitley. He's in hospital administration, I believe. Very stable. I'm not looking to be set up, Mother. Well, your options will get more limited with each passing year, she said, especially in your situation. Before I could answer, our server appeared and cleared the course. I hadn't really detected the taste of my own invention since I was too stressed to fully enjoy it. Is there a problem with the dish? Ivy inquired Vivian, noticing her fully filled plate. Too acidic, Vivian said dismissively. And the tomatoes could have been riper. I bit my tongue. Those tomatoes had been picked at their finest that morning from an upstate farm that produced them just for us. I'm sorry to hear that, Ivy responded with studied diplomacy. I'll be sure to inform the kitchen. The next item arrived, grilled scallops with a brown butter emulsion and pickled ramps, a spring special that I was quite proud of. As the platters were laid down, I saw my family's reactions. Now this looks promising, my father said, biting into a scallop with a fork. He swirled his wine, a Sancerre that I had specially chosen to go with this entree. Decent wine list here. Not exceptional, but passable. Marco, overhearing as he passed, gave me a swift glance. I gave him a gentle smile. Marco had been poached from a 3-star Michelin restaurant in Paris and had turned down offers from restaurants all around the world to collaborate with me. Sodra, Callista began, clearly attempting to include me. Daniel mentioned you work in food, but you never really specified what you do. Before I could respond, Vivian interrupted. She's probably hostessing somewhere, right, Dar? Using that business degree to seat people and hand out menus. Actually, I began. No shame in that, my father interjected. Everyone has to start somewhere. Though after 5 years, I would have expected some advancement. I've advanced, I answered quietly. Into what? Assistant manager at Applebee's? Vivian giggled at her own joke. Vivian, Daniel warned, demonstrating a rare moment of protection. What? I'm just being realistic. She chose to abandon her education for this passion project. Actions have consequences. I took a drink of wine, allowing the familiar flavors to ground me. And how is the law treating you, Vivian? Are you still at Henderson and Block? Her expression stiffened. I'm between positions at the moment. Actually, taking time to plan the wedding. She was working too many hours, Olivia interjected. I told her my wife doesn't need to kill herself at some firm once we are married. She can do charity work like my mother. I noticed a spark of resentment. Frustration? In Vivian's eyes, before she returned to a calm expression of agreement. The next entree was a pasta dish with hand-rolled tagliatelle, spring peas, pancetta, and mint. One of our specialty recipes has been featured in Food and Wine. The portion size here is ridiculous, my mother said, glancing at the elegantly presented spaghetti. All this expense for 3 bites. It's about quality over quantity, Mother, you said. The tasting menu is designed to take you through multiple flavors and textures. In my day, restaurants gave you a proper meal for your money, my father said. This cuisine nonsense is just a way to charge more for less food. I watched as he chopped his spaghetti rather than spin it, breaking the beautiful strands I had hand-rolled that morning. So, how exactly are you affording a place like this on a food service salary? Vivian inquired plainly. This is one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. I felt all eyes on me. I manage my finances carefully, I said. Oh please, Vivian scoffed. A dinner here costs more than you probably make in a day. Who are you dating? Is he paying for this? I'm not dating anyone, I replied evenly. Then how can you possibly afford this place? She pressed. Are you in debt? Maxing out credit cards to keep up appearances? Vivian, Daniel warned again, looking uneasy. No, I want to know, she said. We all rearranged our schedules for this dinner that she suggested at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Either she's being financially irresponsible or she's not being honest about her situation. The next item arrived. Wonderfully cooked duck breast served with cherry gastrique and farro. Chef Sophia, who was in charge of the kitchen when I wasn't around, had done an excellent job. This duck is undercooked, Olivia said after one bite. I looked at his plate. The duck was cooked perfectly medium rare like it should be. It's meant to be served that way, I said. Medium rare is the optimal temperature for duck breast. I prefer my meat well done, he said, motioning to a waitress. When Ivy approached, he spoke without glancing at her. This is raw. Take it back and cook it properly. I observed a flash of displeasure in Ivy's eyes, which was soon concealed by professional courtesy. Of course, sir. My apologies. As she took his plate, I caught her gaze and gave a little nod. She would know to have the kitchen prepare a new breast rather than overcooking the current one. Really, Draw? My mother remarked after Ivy had left. You still haven't answered Vivian's question. How are you affording this dinner? The tension around the table was apparent now. I could feel the familiar heaviness in my chest, something I'd experienced at innumerable family dinners growing up. The feeling of being cornered, assessed, and found wanting before I had a chance to speak. But I was no longer the same insecure young woman. I had created something I was proud of, and it was entirely mine. I debated revealing everything right then, seeing their emotions alter as they recognized which restaurant they were in and whose dish they had been evaluating so casually. Before I could make a decision, Olivia's overdone duck reappeared, devoid of all suppleness and nuance. Much better, he declared after one bite, despite the fact that I could see from across the table that it had dried out and become tough. My father signaled for the wine list again. Let's order another bottle, something more impressive this time. As Marco approached with a leather-bound list, my father made a show of perusing it before pointing to one of our most costly options, a Bordeaux costing more than $800. This one should suffice, he declared. I knew that bottle quite well. I chose it during a trip to France last year and met with the vintner in person. It was wonderful, but entirely inappropriate for the present and next courses. May I suggest something that might pair better with the remaining dishes? I thought about it. My father waved me off. I think I know my wines, Dar. Marco caught my eye and softly asked for directions. I gave him a slight nod. Let my father have his way. This was hardly the hill to die on. The punches continued throughout the evening, including the last savory dish and dessert, a deconstructed lemon tart that was one of my personal favorites. Every dish drew some criticism. Every attempt I made to add to the conversation turned into proof of my failure. By the time coffee was served, I was emotionally exhausted. The double strain of suffering my family's disdain while witnessing them casually criticize my life's work was becoming unbearable. Then came the moment I'd been dreading and anticipating, the check. Adrian approached with a black leather folder carrying the bill and placed it discreetly in the center of the table. My father reached for it instinctively out of patriarchal duty, but Olivia intervened. Please, Charles, allow me, he urged with the practiced smoothness of someone who has used even charity as a power move. Consider it my treat to celebrate the occasion. My father made the typical modest protest before giving in. I watched Olivia open the folder, his demeanor changing from confident smile to barely veiled horror as he recorded the sum. Is there a problem? My father inquired, noting the shift. No, Olivia responded swiftly. Just confirming the calculation. I recognized what he was looking at. A dinner for 7 including premium wine pairings, special off-menu requests, and the $800 Bordeaux would cost well over $3,000. Not exorbitant for a restaurant of Maison's caliber, but certainly noteworthy. He grabbed for his wallet and slowly removed a black credit card, making sure everyone noticed the exclusive tier. Vivian, probably sensing his uneasiness, picked that opportunity to return to her previous probing. "So, she began, her voice full of false sweetness. "You never did say how you're managing to contribute to this extravagant dinner. We wouldn't want you stretching yourself financially on our account." All eyes returned to me. I could feel the classic dynamic emerging. Vivian the successful one, myself the suffering letdown. "I can cover my portion," I replied simply. "Can you though?" she asked, leaning forward. "Because we all know what food service pays. Can you even afford this place?" The table went silent. The question hovered in the air, so purposefully offensive that even my parents were uncomfortable. "Vivian," my mother whispered. "Perhaps this isn't—" "No, I want to know," Vivian argued, her eyes fixed on mine. "We've spent the entire evening pretending that everything's fine, that Dar's choice to throw away her education hasn't left her struggling. I think we deserve some honesty." I felt a scorching heat rise up from my chest to my cheeks. After 5 years of distance, of developing my own life and success, nothing has changed. I was still the family's disappointment, and I was pushed to defend my presence. Olivia, possibly feeling an opportunity to regain control following the initial shock, joined in. "If you need help with your portion, just say so. No shame in that." "I don't need help," I stated, my voice tight. "Then how exactly are you paying for this?" Vivian inquired. "Because a meal here costs more than you probably make in a week." I opened my lips to answer, finally revealing everything, when Olivia frowned at the bill. "Wait, there's a mistake here," he said. "They've only charged us for the wines, not the food," he said sternly to Adrian. "Excuse me. There's an error on our check." Adrian approached our table with perfect timing, as if he had been waiting for this moment. He most likely had been. My employees knew me well enough to be watching this scenario unfold. "Is there a problem, sir?" he inquired. "Yes, you only charged us for the beverages and not the meal," Olivia responded, referring to the bill. Adrian stared at the check and then at me, his expression uncertain. In that moment, I made my decision. The charade had lasted long enough. I gave Adrian a small nod. "There's no error, sir," Adrian responded calmly. "The dinner portion has been taken care of." "By whom?" my father inquired, wondering. Adrian turned to face me, his professional manner giving way to a friendly smile. "Welcome back, Miss Isabella. Your usual table is ready for your meeting with the investors. Would you like me to handle the situation?" There was utter stillness over the table. 6 pairs of eyes looked at me with varying degrees of astonishment and incredulity. "Thank you, Adrian," I murmured, my voice firm despite the excitement running through me. "Yes, please close out Mr. Harrington's beverage tab. The rest is on the house, as usual." "Very good, Miss Dar," he said, removing the folder from Olivia's now slack grip. "Chef Sophia mentioned she'd like your opinion on the new spring menu items when you have a moment." "I'll stop by the kitchen before my meeting," I told him. As Adrian left, I stared directly at my family. Their reactions ranged from bewilderment to astonishment to the dawn of understanding. What is happening?" my mother finally asked. I took a deep breath. The moment I had dreaded and secretly anticipated for 5 years had arrived. "Welcome to Maison," I replied simply. "My restaurant." The silence lasted for what seemed like an age. My father was the first to recover, his face changing from confused to calculated. "Your restaurant," he said gently. "You work here." "No, father," I said, feeling a weird serenity settle over me. "I own Maison, I'm the executive chef and sole proprietor." "That's impossible," Vivian exclaimed. "This is one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. It's been featured in major magazines." "Yes, I agree. Food and Wine last month. Bon Appetit before that. The New York Times gave us 4 stars in their review last year." Olivia stared at me as if I had suddenly begun speaking in tongues. But you said you worked in food, you were vague about everything." "Because I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I was struggling. I told you. And you've all made that abundantly clear tonight." My mother's hand fluttered to her pearls, her go-to gesture when socially unstable. "Darling, why wouldn't you tell us about this achievement?" Her emphasis on achievement said it all. Success made my decisions retrospectively acceptable in a way that passion never could. "Would you like the full story?" I inquired, glancing around the table. Without waiting for a response, I continued. "After I left 5 years ago, I moved to the city with what little savings I had. I rented a tiny room in an apartment with 3 roommates in Queens. For a year, I worked 3 jobs: prep cook at a bistro from 5 a.m. to noon, line cook at a midtown restaurant from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m., and weekend shifts at a bakery. I took a sip of water and noticed their uneasy expressions. I slept 4 hours a night. I had blisters and burns up and down my arms. I studied technique obsessively in my rare free moments. Chef Julian, who had initially encouraged me to pursue culinary arts, took me under his wing. I became his sous chef within 18 months. Daniel looked at me with what appeared to be genuine attention. Callista seemed impressed. My parents appeared frozen in a condition of reappraisal. 2.5 years ago, I was working a private event at Julian's restaurant. A guest, Edward Lane of Lane Capital, tried my special course and asked to meet the chef. He was surprised to find someone so young had created what he called the most innovative dish he'd tasted in years. I made a circle around us. Edward became my investor. We discovered the location, which was a failed nightclub at the time. I created the concept, designed the menu, hired the personnel, and handled every detail, even the lighting fixtures and specialty plates. But the cost, my father remarked, his thoughts still apparently focused on the economics. A restaurant of this caliber, in this location, it must have required millions. $3,400,000 for the initial investment, I verified. And Edward brought in 2 other investors. We opened to immediate acclaim, thanks in part to Julian's backing and industry ties. 6 months later, we were profitable. 3 months later, I used the restaurant's performance to acquire a loan and buy out my investors. I've been the sole owner for over a year. That's why you suggested we meet here, Vivian said quietly. You knew all along. Actually no, I corrected her. Callista chose this place. Is that correct, Callista? All eyes were drawn to Daniel's wife, who blushed profoundly. I had no idea, Dara. The concierge at Daniel's firm recommended it as the most impressive new restaurant in town. I swear I didn't realize it was yours. Of course you didn't, I comforted her. And no one in the family knew. That was deliberate on my part. But why keep it a secret? My mother pressed. We are your family. We would have been proud. I couldn't help but chuckle sharply. Would you? The same family that dismissed cooking as servant work, who completely ignored me when I chose culinary school, and who just minutes ago made disparaging remarks about my life choices. My father cleared his throat. Now that's unjust. We were anxious about your stability and future. If we'd known you had this level of commercial acumen. That's exactly my argument, I interjected. You couldn't appreciate my passion only. It only has worth for you now because it is associated with achievement and prestige. Chef Sophia entered our table in her crisp whites. Sofia Delgado, chef de cuisine, monogrammed on the breast, and cut an attractive figure. Sorry to interrupt, she began. But the Matsuhisa party has arrived for their tasting, and Armand would like to confirm your interview for next week's feature. Also, your publisher inquired regarding the cookbook cover design. I nodded. Thank you, Sophia. Please let them know I'll be there shortly. As Sophia walked away, I noticed my family's eyes widen in surprise. Cookbook, Vivian repeated. Coming out this fall with Knopf? I replied. 120 recipes with personal stories. My mother continued, her voice taking on the soothing tone she used when attempting to control a social situation. This is all really amazing. Why haven't you told us sooner? We could have assisted and supported you. How did you support me when I needed it the most? I asked quietly. By entirely shutting me off? We believed it was a phase, my father complained. How did we know you had such a strong entrepreneurial spirit? You have clearly inherited my business sense. I was furious at his attempt to take credit for my achievement. I built this myself, I replied firmly, without your connections, money, or support. Olivia, who had been curiously silent, suddenly brightened up. A cookbook agreement must come with a significant advance. And this location, he gestured around appreciatively, his earlier criticisms forgotten, must generate big revenue. Do you have plans to expand? Maybe a restaurant group? I have several contacts in hotel investment who may be interested. I couldn't help but grin at the honesty of this shift from condescension to networking opportunity. I'm doing quite well with my current advisors, but thank you, I replied. Vivian gave him an irritated glance before returning my gaze. So, all this time, when I thought you were failing, you were actually succeeding, building all this? Yes, I answered simply. And tonight, she said, her voice sharpening. You let us sit here criticizing your food, wine list and portion sizes, all while knowing it was yours. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I was still the family failure, I'd said. And now I know. That seems manipulative, she snapped. But I could feel her discomfort behind her rage. What's more deceptive than questioning how I could afford to eat here and then implying that I must be in debt or dating someone affluent to afford a lunch at this table? I responded. You weren't concerned about me, Vivian. You were relishing your perceived supremacy. As we spoke, the restaurant was gradually emptying as the evening service came to an end, and Marco approached with a bottle. Your special reserve cognac, Miss Isabella, he explained, for your investors' meeting, and Chef Sophia says the kitchen is ready whenever you arrive. Thank you, Marco, I told you. Please let Sophia know I'll be there in 10 minutes. As he walked away, I went back to my startled family and said, I have a business to run, rising from my seat. Thank you for coming this evening. Wait, my mother shouted hastily. Do not leave like this, we should congratulate your success. Perhaps we could all have brunch this weekend and catch up properly. I looked at her and saw for the first time not the terrifying figure of my upbringing, but a lady attempting to reclaim her pride and status. I'll think about it, you replied. But right now, I have investors waiting and a kitchen to oversee. As I started to go, Daniel stood up. Dar, he said, his voice softer than the others. For what it's worth, what you've built here is incredible. It's remarkable. I apologize for not supporting you sooner. Of all the responses, his felt the most genuine. I gave him a modest gesture of recognition before leaving the table where I had just altered the dynamics of my family forever. I had just walked 10 feet when I heard the click of heels behind me. Turning around, I saw my mother rushing to catch up, her flawlessly poised facade beginning to crumble. Please, she begged, lowering her voice. You can't just dismiss this insight and go away. We need to discuss this. I looked toward the private dining room, where my genuine investors, a group of people considering finance for my next restaurant concept, were waiting. I have a meeting, Mother. Postpone it, she pleaded. This is family. Family hasn't been a priority for you in 5 years, I responded, maintaining a steady tone. My business commitments don't suddenly become optional because you finally decided my career is worthy of your attention. The rest of the family had followed her, forming an awkward cluster near the bar area. My father was visibly uncomfortable, unaccustomed to not being in control of a situation. Vivian's expression alternated between bitterness and something that could have been respect. Perhaps we could continue this conversation tomorrow, my father proposed in his problem-solving business tone. Dinner at our place. We have a lot to talk about, Olivia said hopefully, including how we can help you grow. My firm specializes in... I don't need your help, I said firmly. I didn't develop this place only to get your approval. I built it since it's what I enjoy and am good at. The fact that it's successful doesn't make my passion any more valid than it was 5 years ago. No one is saying that, my mother countered. Darling, we're simply proud of what you've accomplished. Are you proud, Mom? Or are you pleased that my choices no longer make you feel embarrassed in social situations? Her flinch informed me I had struck near to home. That's unfair, my father said. We've always wanted what's best for you. No, I corrected him. You wanted what was consistent with your vision for me. There is a difference. Sophia stood by my side, her presence a pleasant reassurance. The Halvard group is asking if you'll be joining them soon, she whispered quietly. 5 minutes, I assured her. As Sophia nodded and went away, I returned my attention to my family. I need to go. Vivian took a step nearer, her voice lacking its normal harsh edge. I owe you an apology. The things I said tonight were unkind. They were honest, I said. That's the silver lining of the evening. I got to witness exactly how you guys perceive me when you believe I'm struggling. That's not fair, Daniel replied, joining the argument. People make decisions based on what they know. We didn't know. You didn't know I was successful, I clarified. But you didn't know I was doing something I enjoyed. That should have been sufficient for my family to demonstrate fundamental respect. A deep silence fell over the group. You're right, my father finally remarked, startling me. We should have supported your passion regardless of its outcome. This acknowledgement was significant since Charles Mitchell didn't admit faults readily. Where should we go from here? My mother inquired, genuine uncertainty in her voice, another rare. I took a deep breath and considered the topic. Despite everything, these people were my family. The grief they caused was real, but so was our shared history. I had never aimed for complete estrangement, just enough distance to construct my own life without their judgment clouding my decisions. I don't know yet, I replied candidly. But tonight has made one thing plain. If we are to continue our relationship, we must do it on different terms. I'm not a family failure looking for redemption. I am a successful chef and business owner who deserves the same respect as any other professional. Of course, my father responded promptly. And that means no more comments about my life choices, no more unsolicited career advice, and absolutely no attempts to network through my restaurant, I said, casting a hard glance at Olivia, who managed to appear ashamed. About Vivian's wedding, my mother asked tentatively. How about it? I asked. We'd still like you to be there, Vivian whispered softly. As my sister. Not as whatever we thought you were before tonight. I glanced at her, trying to see past the years of competitiveness and judgment. Despite everything, there had been beautiful times. Secrets shared as youngsters, support after heartbreaks, intimate jokes no one else understood. I'll be there, I vowed. Then after a moment of thought, I added, and if you'd like, I could host a dinner for the wedding party here at Maison as my gift. Vivian's eyes widened. You'd do that, after how we've treated you. You're still my sister, I answered simply. But, to be clear, I'm not seeking your approval. It's me presenting something I'm proud of on my own terms. I understand, she replied quietly. And I would be honored. We exchanged genuine smiles for the first time that evening. Now I really do need to go, I remarked, pointing to the private dining room. Of course, my father said. Your business comes first. Not always, I told him, but tonight, yes. As they prepared to leave, I mentioned, I'm free for brunch on Sunday. Not in your club, however. There's a small establishment in the East Village that I suggest you should visit. We'll be there, my mother said, relieved at the slight opening. As I watched them leave the restaurant, their viewpoints had irreparably changed, and as the door closed behind them, I exhaled deeply, feeling strangely lighter. Sophia approached again. Is everything okay? Getting there, I responded. Family is complicated. Tell me about it, she said. My mother still introduces me as her daughter who works at a restaurant, like I'm a teenage waitress at Denny's. I smiled, pleased for her understanding. Let's go talk about the spring menu. I am very excited about some of my new ideas. As we proceeded toward the kitchen, my refuge, my achievement, my actual home, I understood that the most important discovery of the evening was not showing my family what I'd accomplished, but completely recognizing it myself. I had achieved this achievement on my own terms, without their approval, and that understanding was more valuable than any recognition they could possibly provide. Spring menu planning, meetings with my publisher regarding the cookbook layout, and preliminary negotiations about a potential second location kept me quite busy for the past 2 weeks. But recollections of that family supper stayed, intruding in quiet moments, demanding reflection. Sunday breakfast had gone unexpectedly well. I'd brought my family to Elma's, a hidden treasure managed by a former colleague from my early days working the line. My parents had been visibly uneasy about the mismatched chairs and graffiti-decorated walls, but the food, unpretentious yet masterfully executed, had won them over. I never knew simple eggs could taste like this, my father had admitted, mopping up the last of his shakshuka with homemade sourdough. Small steps. Not a complete transformation, but an opening. Sitting at my usual table after closing time, I watched the staff complete their final duties. Ivy was counting the register while humming softly. Adrian and Marco were discussing wine pairings for tomorrow's private event. Sophia had left an hour ago after we'd finalized the spring menu revisions. My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. Wedding planning nightmare. Florists just doubled their quote. Any chance you're free for coffee tomorrow? Could use some straight. I smiled slightly at this unexpected request for my opinion, and I texted back, confirming a time and place. The relationship with my family was evolving into something I couldn't have predicted. Measured respect between adults with different values and paths. My mother had called 3 times in the last 2 weeks, her usual formality softening into genuine questions about my work. My father had sent an article about female chefs breaking barriers in the industry, a silent acknowledgement that he was trying to understand my world. And Daniel had reached out, asking if he could bring his children to see the kitchen sometime. I want them to know they have options, he'd said, that success doesn't have to look the same for everyone. These were fragile beginnings, not the dramatic reconciliation of a Hollywood movie. Real healing, I discovered, occurs in quiet moments and modest gestures, in the incremental rewriting of old patterns. The most significant shift, however, was not in my family's image of me, but in how I had finally stopped assessing my worth through their eyes. The validation I had always frantically sought from them now felt strangely unneeded, since I had proven myself, not to them, but to myself. This realization had rippled through other areas of my life as well. I'd launched a mentorship program for young chefs from disadvantaged backgrounds, offering them the guidance and opportunity I'd fought so hard to find. "Chef?" Ivy's voice interrupted my thoughts. "We're all ready for closing. Is there anything else you need before we leave?" "No, thank you," I cracked a joke. "You all did amazing work tonight." As the staff went out, calling their good nights, I remained at my seat, my notebook open to a blank page. I'd been attempting to articulate the introduction to my cookbook, fighting to find words that conveyed my trip, and in the stillness of the empty restaurant, I finally began writing. Food has always been my truest language. When words failed, I communicated through flavors, and when pathways were obscure, I followed my palate. The recipes in this book are more than just recipes. They're chapters of a life lived in quest of authenticity above approval. 5 years ago, I was at a crossroads between expectation and passion. Choosing the latter cost me dearly at first, but ultimately led to the richest feast I could have imagined. Not only professional success, but the discovery that true wealth isn't measured by external validation or material achievement, but by the courage to honor your own voice, even when it speaks in whispers against the shouts of doubt. I lay down my pen, the words finally flowing freely. Tomorrow would bring fresh challenges. A difficult vendor negotiation, Vivian's wedding planning drama, and the finalization of the cookbook introduction, but today, in this moment of peaceful thought, I felt inner calm. The journey had not been easy. There had been nights of exhaustion so complete that I'd fallen asleep in kitchen corners during rare breaks, burns and cuts that left scars on my hands, and moments of doubt so intense that I'd questioned everything. But I had persevered. Not to prove my worth to others, but because I couldn't imagine living any other way. By choosing authenticity above acceptance, I discovered something more valuable than success or familial validation: myself. Have you ever had to choose between meeting others' expectations and following your own heart? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more true stories of resilience and triumph, and share with someone who may need a reminder that the most important approval comes from within. Thank you for joining me on this journey. My sister slapped me in front of 200 people at her wedding because I wouldn't give her my penthouse. Turns out, a judge was watching. At my sister's lavish wedding, my parents insisted that I give up my penthouse for their new family. Mom exclaimed, "Selfish children don't deserve success." Dad added, "Your sister's children need real homes." Sister scoffed, "Finally getting what I've always deserved." When I declined, she struck me harshly in front of 200 people. Everyone began laughing. I did not cry. I picked the revenge that would permanently silence them. The champagne flute trembled in my palm as I saw my sister Sabrina glide across the marble floor of the Ritz-Carlton's large ballroom, her custom Vera Wang gown trailing behind her like liquid silk. 200 people had arrived to see her fairy tale wedding to Derek, a brilliant investment banker she met only 8 months before. I couldn't help but notice the irony that she was marrying for money while wanting me. I'm Vivian, 32 years old, and I've worked my ass hard to be where I am now. While Sabrina was busy playing house with several lovers in her 20s, I was pulling all-nighters in law school and working 70-hour weeks at a top Manhattan firm. 5 years ago, I took the biggest risk of my life by establishing my own firm, focusing on business litigation. It paid off spectacularly. Last year I concluded a settlement that allowed me to acquire a penthouse overlooking Central Park, which everyone now claimed belonged to them. "Vivian, darling, you look absolutely radiant." My mother Diane approached with her typical phony smile, which she saved for when she wanted something. Her silver hair was precisely coiffed, and she wore a navy dress that likely cost more than most people's rent. "We need to have a little family chat." My stomach sank. Family conversations in the Morrison household were never good news. "Mom, it's Sabrina's wedding day. Can't whatever this is wait?" "Actually, no." My father Robert appeared beside her, his expression harsh. At 58, Dad still commanded attention in his fitted tuxedo, but his eyes bore the unmistakable disappointment that had haunted me since boyhood. "We've been discussing your living situation." "My living situation?" I sat down with my champagne and realized I needed both hands free. "What about my living situation?" "Well, honey," Mom's voice took on that sickeningly lovely tone. You know how Sabrina and Derek are starting their family. They're going to need more space than that tiny apartment Derek has been renting. I blinked. They're not even pregnant yet, Mom. But they will be soon. Sabrina's voice echoed over the little circle as she joined us, her new husband's arm around her waist. At 28, she was certainly attractive, with auburn hair and green eyes. But her expression was calculated, and it made my skin crawl. We're planning to start trying right away. Congratulations, I murmured cautiously. I'm sure you'll find a lovely place to raise your family. We already have, Sabrina replied, her smile bright. We want your penthouse. The words struck me like a physical blow. Excuse me? Now Vivian, before you get all defensive, Dad jumped in, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. Think about this logically. You're a single woman. You don't need all that space. Sabrina and Derek, on the other hand, are starting a family. They need room for children, for their future. You want me to give up my home? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The home I worked for years to afford? Not give up, Mom hastily corrected. Trade. You could take Derek's apartment. It's perfectly adequate for one person. A 600-foot studio in Queens? I asked frankly. You want me to trade my 3-bedroom penthouse on the Upper West Side for a studio apartment in Queens? Vivian, don't be so dramatic, Sabrina urged. It's not like you even use all that space. What do you need 3 bedrooms for? You don't even have a boyfriend. The comment stung, just as she had intended. Sabrina had always been the ideal child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. They hailed her bold for dropping out of college to find herself. They referred to her career and relationship changes as exploring her options. When I graduated summa cum laude from law school, they were concerned that I had worked too hard. I need those bedrooms because it's my home, I responded, my voice rising slightly. I earned it, I paid for it, and I'm not giving it up. Vivian Elizabeth Morrison, Mom's voice became harsh. That is incredibly selfish. Family comes first. Always. Family? I laughed cruelly. Have any of you ever treated me like family? When I needed help preparing for the bar test, you said I was being antisocial. When I established my own business and struggled, you accused me of being careless. When I finally succeeded, you pretended it was an accident. That's not true, Dad said. However, his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? When was the last time any of you inquired about my life, career, and happiness? But as soon as I have anything you desire, I'm back with my family. Sabrina came forward, her face red with rage. You know what your problem is, Vivian? You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I'm getting married, that I'm going to have the family you'll never have. I'm not jealous of you, Sabrina. I'm disappointed in you. Disappointed? She laughed harshly. Are you disappointed in me? I'm the one getting married, and I'll be the one to give Mom and Dad grandkids. What have you done besides make money? I've built a life, I said gently. I've worked hard for everything I have. I've never asked any of you for anything. Well, now we're asking something of you, Dad stated firmly. Your sister needs that penthouse more than you do. It's time you did something for your family, instead of just yourself. Robert's right, Mom said, raising her voice. Selfish children don't deserve success. You've had everything handed to you, and now you won't even help your own sister. The accusation was so ludicrous that I nearly laughed. Handed to me? I worked 3 jobs to pay for law school. I lived on ramen noodles for 2 years while building my practice. I've never asked you for a dime. Your sister's kids need real homes, Dad said loudly across the ballroom, causing several nearby visitors to turn and stare. Not some cramped apartment. They deserve better. They're not even conceived yet, I protested, but I knew I was losing this battle. My family was always brilliant at making me feel bad about my accomplishments. Sabrina moved closer, her voice low and nasty. You know what, Vivian? I'm done pretending to care about your feelings. I've always known I was the better daughter. I'm prettier. I'm more likable. I'm the one who makes Mom and Dad proud. And now I'm finally getting what I've always deserved. The words hung in the air between us, posing a challenge. Around us, wedding guests began to gather, sensing drama. Some were openly staring now, their discussions dying as they concentrated on our family argument. What do you always deserve? I said softly. And what exactly is that, Sabrina? Everything, she replied simply. The penthouse, the respect, the life you've been hoarding for yourself. I deserve it all, and I'm finally going to get it. Over my dead body. The slap came so fast that I didn't see it coming. Sabrina's fingers hit my cheek with a piercing snap that rang across the ballroom. For a brief while, the sound appeared to stop. 200 guests fell silent, their discussion breaking in mid-sentence as they turned to watch the sight unfold in front of them. Then the laughter began. It started with a few scattered giggles from Sabrina's friends, who had always looked down on me for being too serious and focused on work. But it spread like wildfire among the audience. Guests who did not know me were laughing, pointing, and muttering behind their hands. "Did you see that? She actually slapped her." About time someone put Vivian in her place. I always knew she was stuck up. My cheek burned, but I did not cry. I would not offer them satisfaction. Instead, I stood there, feeling the pressure of 200 pairs of eyes on me, listening to their laughing, whispered comments, and judgment. Sabrina smiled triumphantly. "Maybe now you'll start acting like a real sister." Mom and Dad stood behind her, not apologizing for their daughter's actions nor protecting me. They merely watched, waiting to see if I'd ultimately give in to their demands. That's when I realized something significant. This wasn't only about the penthouse. This was about them keeping me in my place, reminding me that no matter how successful I was, or how hard I worked, I would always be the disappointment, the one who didn't count. But they had made one critical error. They had humiliated me in front of 200 witnesses, including some prominent figures from New York's legal and commercial circles. People who knew me, respected me, and witnessed what I was capable of. I reached into my bag and took out my phone, my hands remarkably still despite the wrath running through my veins. Without speaking, I began typing. "Vivian, what are you doing?" Mom inquired uneasily. I ignored her and continued to type. People around us began to laugh less as they noticed I wasn't behaving as expected. I wasn't crying or running away in humiliation. I was doing something else totally. "Vivian, put that away," Dad said. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," I said quietly, kept typing. "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed." Sabrina attempted to grab my phone, but I moved aside and clicked send just as her fingertips touched the screen. "What did you do?" she hissed. I looked up at her, my parents, and the multitude of guests who were still watching us with unmistakable interest. "I chose the revenge that would silence you forever." Their confused expressions were nearly hilarious. They clearly expected me to either give in to their demands or burst out crying. They did not expect me to fight back. My phone buzzed with an answer, followed by another, and then several more in fast succession. "Vivian, what did you send?" Mom's voice became shrill, panic setting in. I gave the first genuine smile I'd felt all evening. "I sent a message to my group chat. You know, the one with all my lawyer friends, the journalists I've worked with, the business contacts I've made over the years, the people who actually matter in this city." Sabrina's face turned white. "What kind of message?" "Just a little update about tonight's events. How my family demanded I give up my penthouse to my sister and her new husband. How my mother screamed that selfish children don't deserve success. How my father said my sister's hypothetical children needed real homes more than I do. How my sister slapped me in front of 200 people because I wouldn't hand over my life's work." The ballroom had gone utterly silent. Even the string quartet had ceased performing. "I also mentioned how everyone laughed when I was assaulted," I said, my voice clearly audible over the hush. "How amusing they found it that a successful woman was being put in her place by her family." "Vivian, you need to delete that right now," Dad warned, his voice dangerously low. I shrugged. "Delete what? The truth?" "Too late anyway. It's already been shared. You know how social media works, Dad. Once something's out there, it's out there forever." My phone was now continuously vibrating with messages of sympathy, fury on my behalf, and pleas for additional information. The story was spreading faster than I had expected. "You vindictive!" Sabrina screamed, her voice wavering slightly. "No, Sabrina. I'm just done being your doormat." Derek, who had been mute during the argument, eventually spoke up. "Vivian, maybe we can work something out. We didn't mean for things to go this far." I stared at him with pity. "You married into the wrong family, Derek. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." "What do you mean?" he inquired, his tone betraying genuine confusion. "I mean your new wife and in-laws just made some very powerful enemies. Do you know who Judge Margaret Chen is? She was here tonight. She saw everything. She's already texted me, expressing her disgust at your wife's behavior. Sabrina's face changed from white to green. Judge Chen was one of New York's most recognized judges, known for having no tolerance for entitled conduct. And David Rodriguez from the Times? He's been following me around all evening, trying to get an interview about my latest case. He saw the whole thing. He's asking if I want to comment on how successful women are treated by their families. Vivian, stop, Mom urged. You're going to ruin Sabrina's wedding. Sabrina ruined her own wedding when she decided to assault me in front of 200 people. It was just a slap, Sabrina insisted. You're being dramatic. It was an assault, Sabrina. And it was witnessed by 200 people, including several lawyers, a judge, and apparently a reporter. You want to know what I deserve? I deserve not to be physically attacked by my own family. My telephone rang. I looked at the screen and smiled. Oh, this is interesting. It's Amanda Walsh from Walsh & Associates. You know, the law firm that handles high-profile reputation management cases. She's offering her services pro bono. Sabrina's face became drained of blood. In New York society, reputation management was synonymous with controversy control. And if Amanda Walsh called, it meant the tale had already moved beyond my small circle. Vivian, please, Sabrina said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hit you. I was just emotional. You're sorry? I chuckled, but it wasn't funny. You're sorry that there are consequences to your actions. You're sorry that you can't just take whatever you want from me without pushback. But you're not sorry for what you did. I am sorry, she insisted. I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell everyone it was a mistake. Too late for that. The damage is done. And it was. I could see it on the faces of the people surrounding us. The laughter had stopped completely, replaced by uneasy whispers and pointed stars. People who had previously considered my humiliation humorous now looked at Sabrina with disgust. The social media posts had already gone viral, and in New York's affluent circles, reputation meant everything. What do you want? Dad said calmly, defeat evident in his voice. I want you to leave me alone, I stated plainly. All of you. I want you to stop treating me like an ATM. Stop expecting me to sacrifice my happiness for Sabrina's convenience. And stop pretending that family means anything to you beyond what you can get from me. Vivian, we're still family, Mom murmured softly. No, we're not. Family doesn't demand you give up your home. Family doesn't scream at you in public. Family doesn't assault you at a wedding. Family supports each other, celebrates each other's successes, and treats each other with respect. You've never done any of those things for me. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was an SMS from my assistant. Vivian, TMZ is calling. They want to know if you are the lawyer who was assaulted at the Ritz-Carlton wedding. What do I tell them? I held the phone up so that everyone could read the message. TMZ is calling. This is about to become a very public story. Sabrina started crying, her flawless makeup spilling down her cheeks. Vivian, please. This is my wedding day. Don't ruin it. I'm not ruining anything, Sabrina. I'm just refusing to be your victim anymore. What can we do? Derek asked, desperate. How do we fix this? I looked at him, then at my parents, and last at my sister, who was sobbing in her wedding dress. You can't fix this, Derek. This is who they are. This is what they do. They take and take and take until there's nothing left. And when you finally say no, they attack you for it. The ballroom was beginning to empty now. Guests were making excuses and slipping away from what was obviously a family disaster. Sabrina's beautiful wedding was unraveling, and everyone wanted to isolate themselves from the chaos. The penthouse is mine, I said gently. I earned it. I paid for it, and I'm keeping it. If you want to live somewhere nice, Sabrina, get a job. Work for it like I did. I can't believe you're doing this, she muttered. I can't believe it took me this long. When I turned to leave, Dad grabbed my arm. Vivian, wait. We can work this out. Family counseling, mediation, whatever you want. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up to his face. Let go of me, Dad. He quickly released me, evidently aware of the consequences of physically restraining me in light of what had just occurred. There's nothing to work out, I informed them. You made your choice tonight. You chose Sabrina over me just like you always have. You chose her convenience over my hard work. You chose her demands over my boundaries. And when I said no, you chose to watch her assault me rather than defend me. We didn't know she was going to hit you, Mom insisted. But you didn't stop her. You didn't apologize. You didn't even check if I was okay. You just stood there and let it happen. I began heading toward the exit, my heels clicking across the marble floor. Behind me, I could hear Sabrina's weeping, Mom's frantic murmurs, and Dad's angry mumbling. But I did not glance back. At the door, I turned around one more time. The once grand ballroom now resembled the site of a calamity. Wedding attendees were separated into tiny groups, whispering and pointing. The bride cried in her destroyed makeup. The groom appeared stunned, and my parents were attempting to contain the damage that was already spiraling out of hand. You know what the funny thing is, I exclaimed, my voice echoing around the virtually empty room. I would have helped you if you'd asked nicely, if you'd come to me with respect, if you treated me like family instead of like a bank account. I would have helped you find a nice place to live. I might have even helped with the down payment. The hush that ensued was deafening. But you didn't ask for help. You demanded my home. You screamed at me, insulted me, and then physically attacked me when I said no. So now, you get nothing. I walked out of the Ritz-Carlton with my head held high, leaving behind the devastation of my sister's wedding and my family's reputation. The elevator trip down seemed interminable. As the doors closed behind me, I could still hear the turmoil in the ballroom. Muffled voices, crying, and chairs scraping against marble as the remaining guests hurried to exit. My phone hadn't stopped vibrating since I wrote that message, and with each notification, I felt a combination of relief and dread. The lobby was thankfully quiet. The night manager, a distinguished gentleman in his 50s, approached me with concern on his face. Ms. Morrison, is everything all right? We heard there was some commotion upstairs. I paused, thinking that even the hotel workers knew about the incident. I'm fine, thank you. Just family drama. He nodded nicely, but I could see the interest in his eyes. By tomorrow, this story would have traveled across the hotel's staff gossip network and other luxury places across the city. In New York's aristocratic circles, scandals spread like wildfire. Outside, the crisp October air hit my face like a slap, odd given that I had already been slapped once tonight. I remained on the sidewalk for a time, watching the traffic flow along Central Park South and attempting to understand what had just occurred. Part of me couldn't believe I'd accomplished it. The other part of me questioned why it had taken this long. My telephone rang. Riley, my dearest friend, was a prosecutor I met during my first year at the company. Vivian, what the hell is going on? I just saw your group message, and now there are photos all over Instagram. Did Sabrina really hit you? She did. I began walking towards the metro, needing to move and do something with the adrenaline still pouring through my veins. Holy, are you okay? Do you want me to come over? I'm fine, Jess. Actually, I'm better than fine. I think I'm finally free. Free? Free from pretending they're actually my family. Free from feeling guilty about my success. Free from walking on eggshells every time I'm around them. There was a pause at the other end. Vivian, you know this is going to get messy, right? Like really messy. I know. But I'm tired of being the one who always has to clean up their messes. Let them figure it out for once. What about your parents? They're going to be devastated. I paused walking. Jess. They stood there and watched their daughter assault me in public. They demanded I give up my home for their golden child. They called me selfish for wanting to keep what I've worked for. When exactly am I supposed to start caring about their feelings? You're right, she replied gently. I'm sorry. I know how much family means to you. Family means everything to me. But they stopped being my family a long time ago. I was just too blind to see it. After hanging up with Riley, I chose to walk home rather than use the subway. I needed time to reflect, to comprehend what had just occurred and what was likely to happen next. The 40-block stroll from Midtown to my Upper West Side condo would allow me that time. As I went, my phone continued to vibrate with messages. Some were from co-workers who had attended the wedding and expressed their shock and support. Others were from pals who had seen the message circulate on social media. A handful were from journalists who had somehow obtained my phone number and wanted quotes on the incident. Patricia Winters, the senior partner at my old business, sent the most startling message. We had parted on good terms when I left to start my own practice, but we rarely spoke anymore. Vivian, I only found out about this tonight. I want you to know you have my full support. What happened to you was terrible, and I applaud you for sticking up for yourself. Please call if you have any questions. Reading her message, I felt tears well up in my eyes for the first time all evening. Not tears of anguish or pain, but tears of thanks. Here was someone who hardly knew my family and had no duty to help me, yet she offered it because it was the proper thing to do. It made me understand how mistaken my family had been about me. They depicted me as a selfish person who only cared about money and achievement. However, the messages flooding my phone painted a different narrative. They came from people who knew the real me, the person who mentored younger associates, did pro bono work for victims of domestic violence, and volunteered at legal aid clinics despite working 80-hour weeks. By the time I arrived at my building, I had over 200 messages and missed calls. My doorman, Luis, stared at me with alarm as I walked into the lobby. "Miss Vivian, you okay? You look like you've had a tough night." Luis had been working in my building for 15 years. He had seen me through law school stress, relationship breakups, employment changes, and many late nights. He knew me better than my family did. "I've had better nights, Luis, but I think things are going to get better from here," he smiled. "That's good to hear. You deserve all the happiness in the world." In the elevator, I finally allowed myself to look closely at my reflection in the mirrored walls. My cheek was still crimson from Sabrina's hit. My hair was somewhat unkempt, and my makeup was smudged, but my eyes were bright and focused. I resembled someone who had been through battle and emerged victorious. As I entered my apartment, it seemed like a haven. The floor-to-ceiling windows provided a panoramic view of the city, with lights glittering like stars. This was my space, my accomplishment, my home, and no one was going to take it away. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, finally allowing myself to sift through the incident-related social media posts. Someone had filmed Sabrina smacking me, perhaps thinking it was humorous at the time, and put it to Instagram. The video had already been posted hundreds of times, and comments ranged from indignation to support. "This is disgusting. Who hits someone at a wedding? That lawyer is my hero for refusing to back down. The sister is certainly entitled to AF. Whether in a family or not, assault is assault." I can't believe that everyone was laughing. What is wrong with people? However, it wasn't just random internet users commenting. I recognized names from New York's legal community, business heavyweights, and even a few celebrities who had reportedly watched the tape. The narrative was taking on a life of its own, reaching well beyond Sabrina's wedding. The phone rang again. This time, it was my assistant Jenna who called from her personal phone. "Vivian, I'm so sorry to bother you on a Saturday night, but I've been getting calls all evening. The office voicemail is full and reporters keep calling my personal line asking for statements." "What kind of reporters?" "Everyone. Local news, Page 6, TMZ, even CNN. This story is everywhere." I closed my eyes, suddenly fatigued. What are they asking? They want to know if you're pressing charges, if you're planning to sue, what your family relationship was like before this. Some are asking about your law practice and your success story. A few want to know about your dating life. Of course, they did. A successful single lady being attacked by her married sister was a common theme in stories about women, success, and family dynamics. "Jenna, I need you to draft a statement. Keep it simple and professional. Something like, Ms. Morrison is grateful for the outpouring of support she's received. She's focusing on her work and her clients at this time and won't be making any further public comments about this private family matter." Should I mention anything about pressing charges? I paused. The fact was, I hadn't even considered filing charges. Sabrina's smack had been intended to humiliate rather than cause bodily hurt. However, the inquiry made me realize that I had possibilities I had not considered. Don't mention charges either way. Let's keep our options open. After hanging up with Jenna, I realized I was hungry. I hadn't eaten anything at the wedding because I was apprehensive about the impending family clash. I ordered Thai food and settled in to properly explore the consequences of tonight's occurrences. By late that evening, the tale had gained significant popularity on social media. The Instagram video of the slap has been published by many gossip accounts, resulting in thousands of views within hours. More intriguing were the lengthy articles already being published about the tragedy. A feminist blogger wrote on how women are expected to compromise their success for families. A family therapist wrote about poisonous family dynamics. A legal expert was discussing New York's assault statutes. My story had grown beyond just family drama. It sparked broader conversations about success, gender, family expectations, and standing up for oneself. Sabrina's Instagram account, which had been filled with wedding photographs and jubilation just hours before, was now inundated with angry comments. People called her entitled, abusive, and spoiled. Her wedding hashtag, #Sabrina and Derek forever, was ironically used to broadcast a video of her punching me. I nearly felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered her triumphant expression as she smacked me, the way she sneered at finally receiving what she deserved, and my sympathy fled. My dinner arrived, and as I ate the pad thai, I began receiving calls from unexpected sources. My college roommate, whom I had not spoken with in years, contacted me to express her support. A cousin on my father's side, who had always been the family's black sheep, contacted me to discuss her own experiences with mistreatment by relatives. Even my high school guidance counselor, who had obviously seen the article on Facebook, called to express her pride in how far I had gone. But the most meaningful call came from Judge Margaret Chen, who had attended the wedding. "Vivian, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the court directory. I wanted to personally apologize for what I witnessed tonight." Judge Chen: "You don't need to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. I should have intervened. I should have said something when I saw what was happening. Instead, I just stood there like everyone else. You were a guest at a wedding, not a referee at a family fight." Perhaps. But I've been thinking about it all evening, and I keep coming back to something. That wasn't just family drama, Vivian. That was a pattern of abuse. Emotional abuse, financial abuse, and then physical abuse. I've seen it too many times in my courtroom. Her comments struck me like a physical blow. I'd been so concentrated on the slap and the demands for my penthouse that I hadn't given much thought to the wider picture. But she was correct. This was more than simply one awful night. This was the culmination of years of my family treating me like a personal ATM, disregarding my accomplishments and making me feel bad about my success. "I never thought of it that way," I said. "Abuse isn't always obvious, especially when it's coming from the family. We're conditioned to accept behavior from relatives that we'd never tolerate from strangers. But what I saw tonight is the financial demands, the public humiliation, the physical violence that's a textbook case of family abuse." After I hung up with Judge Chen, I sat in my apartment for a long time, reflecting on her words. Had I actually been abused by my family? It seemed like too strong a word. They had never hit me until tonight. They had never intimidated me or attempted to control my daily life. However, they had consistently attacked my accomplishments, made me feel guilty about my success, and asked me to sacrifice my happiness for Sabrina's convenience. They treated me like a bank account, not a daughter and sister. When I eventually said no, they publicly ridiculed and physically assaulted me. Maybe Judge Chen was correct. Perhaps this was abuse, but in a form I hadn't recognized. The understanding was simultaneously empowering and painful. It felt liberating since it verified that I had made the correct decision to end my relationship. Heartbreaking because it meant admitting that my family had never truly loved me. They just adored what I could offer them. As the night progressed, I found myself feeling glad for Sabrina's slap. It had been the wake-up call I needed, the final straw that gave me the strength to stop enabling their actions. Without it, I could have continued to be their doormat for years. By 2 a.m., I was exhausted, yet surprisingly calm. I had disabled my phone alerts to stop the continual buzzing and was getting ready for bed when I heard the building's intercom. I looked at the camera monitor and saw Sabrina standing outside, still in her bridal dress, mascara smeared down her cheeks. She looked up at the camera and said, "Please." I wavered for a second. She looked shattered and desperate. Despite everything, the sister I'd grown up with was standing outside my building, screaming for help in her damaged wedding dress. Then I remembered her triumphant expression after she had hit me. I remembered her saying that she deserved everything I had worked for. I remembered 200 people laughing as I stood there, ashamed and alone. I switched off the monitor and went to bed. The story appeared on page 6 the next morning. "Lawyer assaulted by sister at Ritz wedding," read the headline, which was accompanied by a photograph of Sabrina smacking me. The story described the entire affair, from my family's demands for my penthouse to the assault in front of 200 people. By lunchtime, it was trending on social media. The hashtags, Warsh wedding assault and Darsh family grieve went viral, with thousands of people sharing their own tales of entitled family members and supporting my decision to fight back. That afternoon, Sabrina's new mother-in-law called to cancel her invitation to the family Christmas celebration. Derek's legal business conducted an internal investigation after many clients voiced worry about his involvement in the incident. Mom and Dad's country club membership has been quietly stopped awaiting review. The vengeance I chose was neither violent nor criminal. It was just the truth, enhanced by the power of social media and the relationships I had spent years cultivating. Sometimes the most devastating weapon is simply showing others who someone truly is. Sabrina called me a week later, crying and pleading with me to help them control the damage. She was sacked from her work at a boutique public relations agency when clients began canceling their contracts. Derek was about to undergo a professional ethics assessment. Their honeymoon was cut short when photographers began following them. "Vivian, please," she sobbed into her phone. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." "You meant to humiliate me," I answered gently. "You meant to force me to give up my home. You meant to put me in my place in front of 200 people. The only thing you didn't mean was to face consequences for it. I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell everyone I was wrong. Sabrina, stop." I was sitting in my penthouse, admiring the view of Central Park that I had fought so hard for. "You can't apologize your way out of this. You can't take back what you did, and you can't force me to forgive you just because you're finally facing consequences." "But we're family," she muttered. "Family doesn't assault each other, Sabrina. Family doesn't demand sacrifices they're not willing to make themselves. Family doesn't laugh when one of their own is humiliated. I know I messed up, but please help me fix this. I can't fix this for you. This is something you have to live with." She hung up, crying, and I never heard from her again. 6 months later, Sabrina and Derek got divorced. The stress of the incident, along with the financial strain of both losing their jobs, had ended their marriage before it had begun. Sabrina returned to live with our parents, who were experiencing their own social exile. Dad's business struggled as customers distanced themselves from the family, which had become associated with entitlement and selfishness. Meanwhile, my practice flourished. The attention, while initially unsettling, eventually worked in my favor. I became known as the lawyer who refused to be intimidated and stuck up for herself, even if it meant standing alone. New clients contacted me particularly because they had heard about my refusal to back down. I never got my family back. But then I realized I hadn't truly had them to begin with. I had a group of people who regarded me as a resource to be used rather than a person to be appreciated. Naturally, I retained ownership of the penthouse. I eventually turned one of the extra bedrooms into a home office and the other into a guest room for my closest friends. The space Sabrina had stated I didn't need was filled by the relationships I formed with people who respected me for who I was, rather than what I could provide them. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled things differently, if there was a way to keep my boundaries while not hurting my family. But then I remember the sound of that slap booming throughout the ballroom, the laughing of 200 people, and Sabrina's triumphant expression when she thought she had won. I chose the revenge that would permanently silence them, and it worked. They never asked me for anything else. Even though it was unexpected, the silence was just what I had hoped for. In the end, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at someone. Sometimes it is simply refusing to let them get away with it. Sometimes it is standing up and saying, "No. You don't get to treat me like this anymore." And sometimes that's enough to shift everything. Parents used my wedding fund for my twins' lavish celebration. So I finally cut them off, but now they're back needing my help. I, 28F, must explain everything here. I've had this rivalry with my twin sister Emily for as long as I can remember. In my case, it wasn't just between us, but I suppose that's normal for siblings. Without even recognizing it, my parents were deliberately pressuring us into it. I was just there, and they've always treated Emily like she's something unique. I'll tell you why this occurred. Emily is precisely 12 minutes my senior. You heard correctly, 12 minutes. It seems that's all it takes to be my family's golden child. Emily was their miracle baby, the one who could do no wrong, from the day we were born. I wasn't a horrible kid or anything, but she always received the credit for whatever I did. My first recollection of this partiality dates back to kindergarten. Both of us participated in the school play. I played the main part in Little Red Riding Hood and Emily got 2 lines as a flower. Emily started crying on stage during the concert after forgetting her lines. My parents missed my entire performance as they hurried to console her right away. Later that evening, they didn't even recognize my accomplishment. All they could speak about was Emily's bravery for trying. For the duration of primary school, this pattern persisted. Emily would be told, "Oh honey, you tried your best," if she received a C on an exam, but I would hardly be acknowledged if I received consecutive A's. I recall working on a science fair project about renewable energy for weeks in 4th grade. I conducted research, constructed models, and even spoke with regional environmental specialists. When I handed my parents the blue ribbon for winning first place, they hardly gave it a glance. Emily had a difficult day during volleyball practice, but that's still wonderful. Can we discuss this at a later time? After that, I stopped showing them my honors. The worst thing was that they made no effort to conceal their partiality. My dad used to make jokes at family get-togethers about how Emily was their firstborn and, despite the fact that we are twins, those 12 minutes somehow made her the older sister. Emily is our responsible one, she looks after her younger sister, he would remark. I was standing there, listening to them reduce me to Emily's shadow and nothing more. Things started to have a significant psychological impact on me in middle school. I became quite driven to prove myself. I joined as many clubs as I could, including the student council, the debate team, and the math club. I was motivated to excel at everything, so I studied late into the night. Emily, on the other hand, coasted through, doing very little but somehow receiving more attention and recognition. One particular incident in particular sticks out. I was selected to compete in the state-level mathematics competition on behalf of our school in the 8th grade. I prepared for months, frequently studying until 2 or 3 in the morning. Emily had a recreational soccer match on the same day as the competition. In addition to not showing up to help, my parents didn't even inquire about how I was doing. All they could speak about when I brought home the trophy for second place was how Emily needed to be cheered up because her team had lost their game. With greater stakes, high school was more of the same. I was still participating in as many extracurricular activities as I could, taking all of my AP classes, and keeping my GPA at 4.0. Emily spent much of her time at parties and barely kept up a C average. She was still the fun and social one though, and I was criticized for being too competitive and serious. The discrepancy was brought to light during our senior year. Because of my academic accomplishments, I was named valedictorian, accepted on a full scholarship to a top university, and even had an article in the local newspaper. Emily enrolled at community college after barely graduating. However, my parents bemoaned Emily's failure to get into her first choice school for the whole of our graduation celebration, which was meant to be for the two of us. In their address, they made no mention of my accomplishments. The pivotal moment occurred while attending college. I continued to keep perfect grades while working part-time to support myself while attending a prestigious institution to study computer science. I would return home from every break with the hope that something had changed and that perhaps my parents had begun to see my value. Instead, it was Emily this, and Emily that. Somehow her decision to leave community college after just one semester was interpreted as a sign that she was brave enough to follow her own path. Then, in my junior year, came Thanksgiving break. Everything changed when my uncle, who had always had a slightly excessive love for alcohol, made a mistake. He disclosed that my parents hadn't even intended to have twins while he was thinking back on my mom's pregnancy. They were devastated to learn they were expecting 2 children when they had only intended to have 1. My dad, being the docile person he is, simply shrugged and said, "We'll figure it out." My mom had been concerned about how they would manage 2 babies. However, their method of figuring it out was to basically choose a favorite and focus all of their energy on her, which was of course, Emily, their cherished firstborn. In their minds, those pivotal 12 minutes were the difference. After years of wondering why they didn't care about my accomplishments, everything suddenly fell into perspective when my uncle confessed this to me when we were seated at the dinner table. It all made perfect sense. I was the afterthought and the unexpected addition, not the child they had hoped for. Something in me altered after that realization. I gave up trying to please them. I put all of my attention into creating my own life instead. I gave my all to my coursework and internships, wanting to succeed for myself, not for them. I received several job offers from prestigious tech businesses by the time I graduated. I took a job at a promising startup as a software engineer, and after 3 years, I was promoted to senior developer. Emily, meanwhile, was organizing this lavish wedding after meeting a wealthy man at a pub and having a brief flirtation. Naturally, my folks were ecstatic. They couldn't even recall the name of the company I worked for, yet they spent hours on the phone with her talking about the specifics of the wedding. My company was getting ready for an initial public offering, IPO, and my stock options were worth more than Emily's fiancé made in a year. The irony was that I was actually doing very well. They never inquired about my professional background. It was the wedding fund situation that ultimately crushed my heart. The only one who had ever treated us fairly was our grandmother. She left each of us a sizable sum of money before she died, especially for our upcoming weddings. She had been very explicit that we were to share the money evenly. She told me in private that she was aware of my parents' treatment of me and that this was her method of making sure I would have something that was exclusively mine. Naturally, though, my parents were unable to honor her last desires. Emily wanted this ridiculously lavish wedding, complete with a celebrity photographer, a fancy outfit, and several locations. They chose to take from my share of the inheritance rather than urging her to cut back or asking her wealthy fiancé to contribute more. They didn't even tell me. They didn't ask. It wasn't until months after the wedding that my inebriated uncle, yes, the same one, spoke about it at another family get-together. They responded angrily when I confronted them about it. "Oh honey," my mother remarked, dismissively waving her hand. "We were going to tell you eventually. When we can, we'll reimburse you." Even worse was my father's reply. "Well, Emily needed it more. She's the conventional one getting married, and since you're so preoccupied with your work, it's unlikely that you'll even desire a lavish wedding." I felt nothing as I stood in their kitchen staring at these folks who were meant to be my parents. This deep emptiness, without any sadness or rage. They were unable to even comprehend the wrongness of what they had done. They believed that since it was for Emily, it was totally acceptable to take my inheritance without my consent. Emily had always been the focus. I returned to my flat that evening and gave my life a lot of thought. I came to see that Emily had eclipsed or completely disregarded every significant turning point, accomplishment, and proud moment. My graduation from high school. They were too preoccupied in comforting Emily over her grades. Due to Emily's difficulties at community college, my college scholarship was hardly recognized. Emily was preparing for her wedding, so she disregarded my first promotion. I did something I should have done years ago when I opened my laptop. I emailed them and said, "I am aware of the wedding fund. I am aware that, without consulting me, you used my inheritance to pay for Emily's wedding. The way you've treated me throughout my life is more important than the money. You never made an effort to conceal the reality that I was never the daughter you desired. I'm done attempting to win your affection and acceptance. I'm over being the kid you didn't want. Do not get in touch with me again unless it is to repay my money, please." I felt a tremendous weight lift off my shoulders as I pushed send, banned their numbers, and deleted them from all social media. I didn't have to worry about trying to meet Emily's standards or gaining acceptance that I would never receive for the first time in my life. It has been a life-changing year. I gave my job and personal development my all attention. My stock options are now worth more than Emily's whole wedding expenses because our company's initial public offering, IPO, was a success. I started therapy to address my childhood trauma, purchased my own home in a desirable area of the city, and formed sincere friendships with individuals who genuinely respect me for who I am. Occasionally, Emily makes an effort to connect with distant family members or mutual friends. She will write things like, "Family should stick together," or "You're still my sister." But as she saw our parents discount my accomplishments throughout the years, where was this sense of family? When she joyfully received my inheritance for her wedding, where was that? She shared our parents' complicity in everything. Some relatives have attempted to place the blame on me by claiming that I'm being too severe, that blood is thicker than water, and other such things. However, these are the same individuals who silently observed my parents' years-long favoritism of Emily. They remained silent after seeing my treatment. They are no longer able to express an opinion. It's interesting because cutting them off has made me realize who my true family is. My therapist, who is helping me see that none of this was my fault. My coworkers, who applaud my accomplishments, and my college best friend, who assisted me in moving into my new home. The ones that genuinely care about me are these. I have been offered a role as team lead at the firm I work for, which recently launched a new office in a different state. I'm making a decision for the first time in my life without considering how it will compare to Emily or what my parents will say, and it's a great opportunity. It feels amazing to be living my life for myself. Am I the jerk for cutting them off entirely? Reddit? I often question whether I'm being overly dramatic, but every time I consider the possibility of getting back in touch with them, I reflect back on all the years I spent feeling inadequate, and I know I made the correct decision. It's going to get even more complicated now, though, and I need your honest thoughts on what I should do next. Update 1. 2 weeks ago, everything changed drastically. My phone began ringing with several calls from my uncle when I was in the middle of a team meeting. My initial reaction was to ignore it because family calls always indicate turmoil, but I decided to answer it because there was something unique about receiving several calls in quick succession. He began, trembling a little, "Hey, it's Uncle Greg." I knew right away that something was amiss. He is typically the type of guy that remains positive even in the face of adversity. "I need to discuss your parents with you." I felt sick to my stomach. I knew this couldn't be good news because I hadn't heard from them in 2 years. "What's happening?" Trying to speak steadily, I asked. "They were involved in an accident. A rather poor one. They are in the medical facility." He paused, and I heard him inhaling deeply. Their car was struck by a truck that ran a red light. Your dad is in critical condition, and your mom has several fractures. They have spent a few days in the hospital. Days. I said it again, raising my voice. And until now, no one had the idea to tell me. He said, they wanted me to let you know, in a calmer tone. I believe, they want to see you, I believe. That's not all though. Their insurance is having issues. There was, of course. He went on to tell me that 6 months prior, my parents had allowed their health insurance to lapse. They had been having financial difficulties due to credit card debt and poor investments. They were far from being discharged from the hospital, and the medical bills were already mounting. What about Emily? I knew the answer when I asked. Uncle Greg let out a sigh. She said she couldn't assist with the bills when she visited once, immediately following the accident. She didn't want to ask her husband for money so soon after their honeymoon, for some reason. She is occupied with her stepchildren, her new family. That made me giggle. Emily is typical, always coming up with an excuse. Emily was too proud to approach her wealthy husband for assistance with our parents' medical expenditures, even though she had no trouble taking my fortune for her wedding. I sat in my office for a while after I hung up with Uncle Greg, gazing out the window at the skyline of the city. I didn't miss the irony. Now that my stock options had vested and I had more than enough money saved to pay for their medical expenses, I was truly in a position to assist them. Did I want to, though? I was unable to concentrate on anything else for the following few days. I jumped every time my phone buzzed, anticipating a call regarding their status. I couldn't stop picturing them in hospital beds, presumably wondering if I would ever arrive. Since they were my parents, I felt bad for even thinking about not helping. The years of favoritism, the stolen fortune, and the way they only contacted me now because they required something from me were all brought back to me though. Simply put, this was about money. Not about re-establishing contact or making amends. 3 days after Uncle Greg called, Emily texted me. I am aware that you are performing well at work. Parents are in dire need of assistance. This is your opportunity to act morally. My opportunity to act morally? When she was using my inheritance to pay for her wedding, where was this moral compass? Where had she been all those years when she saw our parents brush off my accomplishments? My parents finally called themselves after a week of internal conflict. Although my mother's speech was weak and obviously influenced by painkillers, her deceptive methods remained same. As if the past 2 years of silence hadn't occurred, she began, "Sweetheart, we're in a really tough situation here. According to the specialists, the expenses might reach $200,000, not including rehabilitation. We acknowledge our shortcomings as parents, but..." I interrupted her. "No, you aren't, and you never will be. You haven't gotten in touch with me in 2 years, and the only reason is that you need money." My dad's voice said, "That's not fair." He was probably on speaker. "Your parents are us. Family supports family." That statement, "family helps family," set me off. Anger that had been bottled up for years came to the surface. Family helps family. I said it again. When you used my inheritance to pay for Emily's wedding, where was that feeling? When you missed my college graduation, where were you? Where did you neglect every significant event in my life because you were too preoccupied with showing your admiration for Emily? After a brief period of silence, my mother began to cry. Those recognizable, cunning tears I had heard so many times when she wanted to make me feel bad. She said, "How can you be so cruel? The hospital is where we are. Your dad may require surgery. Will you truly desert us at this point?" I inhaled deeply before uttering the words I had been wishing to say for years. Yes, in fact. Yes, I am. All my life you emotionally abandoned me. You just thought of me as Emily's shadow and your fallback option. Now that Emily is refusing to assist, you turn to me. No, I will no longer be your last option. Starting with, "But we're family," my father said. No, I cut in. We're not. Since you determined that Emily was the only child deserving of your love, we have not been family. I'm finished. Never get in touch with me again. After hanging up, I blocked their numbers once more. I then texted Emily one last time, saying, "They're also your parents. Try it yourself." The days that followed were extremely difficult. I would always have these moments where I would doubt my choice. Was I being too severe? Despite all, should I still assist them? But every time those thoughts surfaced, I was reminded of how they had treated me throughout my life and how they had only ever contacted me when they wanted something. Yesterday, Uncle Greg gave another call. He attempted to guilt-trip me by claiming that my parents required physical therapy and surgery since their health was deteriorating. He said they might lose everything and that they were discussing remortgaging their home. The problem is that I have no responsibility for their financial difficulties. They made their decisions. They decided to give Emily preference. They decided to squander the money I left them. They decided to allow their insurance to expire. They are currently dealing with the fallout from their decisions. Some may accuse me of being heartless. Perhaps I am. But I've been striving to be good enough and win their love my entire life, and I'm done. I am no longer the fallback option. When Emily refuses to take charge, I'm done being the one who has to make all the repairs. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself, even though I realize this makes me seem callous. My mental well-being is more important to me than their guilt trips. My financial stability is more important to me than their shoddy preparation. Reddit, I know I previously questioned whether I was the jerk for cutting them off, but I need to know if I'm the jerk for not helping them pay their medical costs. This one even seems unclear to my therapist. While I feel bad about it, I also think that this is just another instance of them only wanting me around when they need me. And believe me, the narrative doesn't end here. The situation is going to become considerably more intricate. Update 2. My life took yet another drastic change 3 days ago. I was enjoying a peaceful evening at home after a very demanding workday during which we had completed preparations for the opening of our new office. My doorbell rang at precisely 8:07 p.m. when I was studying some project paperwork, enjoying a glass of pricey red wine, a minor luxury I now permit myself, and some classical music playing softly in the background. I hadn't ordered anything and most of my friends normally text before coming over, so I wasn't expecting anyone. I froze, staring through the peephole. Emily was standing there looking like the affluent trophy wife she had become, complete with a fashionable gown, flawless makeup, and a $15,000 Hermes Birkin purse in her hand. I was aware of the irony. That bag alone could have paid for a sizable amount of our parents' medical expenses. I briefly thought about acting as though I wasn't home, but throughout the previous few weeks, I had undergone a transformation. I was no longer the person who squirmed around Emily. She had intimidated me for too long, and I had allowed her to win. No more. I opened the door with my cool, controlled and slightly dismissive corporate boardroom demeanor. Leaning against the doorframe, I remarked, "Well, if it isn't my dear sister. What brings you to my humble abode?" Without waiting for an invitation, she swept by me and entered my apartment. Emily's usual behavior. Her gaze swept across my living area, taking in the original artwork on the walls, the contemporary furnishings, and the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the city. I could picture her mentally listing everything, most likely contrasting it with her suburban McMansion. She said, "Nice place," in a tone that suggested the exact opposite. Very cozy. She used the word cozy with that special emphasis that affluent people give to something they think is beneath them. "Stop wasting your time, Emily. Why have you come here?" She turned to me, adjusting her scarf, an anxious habit from childhood. "Mom and Dad are deteriorating. Mom's physical treatment isn't covered by their payment plan, and Dad needs emergency surgery for internal bleeding they missed at first. Unless they can provide proof of payment, the hospital threatens to suspend treatment. They are discussing selling the house." I saw her knuckles whiten as she gripped her fancy purse more tightly. Emily in her classic form. She was clearly preparing for something. And that's my problem because... I arched an eyebrow, purposefully imitating her patronizing tone from our early years. "Because you can help them," she said, her immaculate exterior beginning to falter. "I am aware that your business went public. I checked the pricing of the stocks. I conducted research. You've got the cash." That made me giggle. The sound, which was perhaps rougher than I intended, reverberated off the walls of my flat. "Oh, you have been monitoring me? How intriguing. Before using my inheritance to pay for your wedding, did you do this much research? Or prior to your own refusal to assist them? In all this, where is your wealthy husband?" Emily's face turned red, another vivid memory from my early years. Her dramatic outbursts, which always ended with our parents comforting her, were always preceded by that flush when we were little. "That's different," she stammered as her poise continued to falter. "I now have a new family. I have obligations. Consider stepchildren. We each have our own financial plans, James and I. When a family situation arises, I can't just throw money at it." "Can't just what?" With a strong voice, I interrupted her. "Can't you simply assist your parents, who have given you everything? Who paid for your wedding with my inheritance? Who prioritizes you the most? Who didn't attend my college graduation to assist you with your apartment move? Those parents." She waved her hand dismissively and said, "That's ancient history." But I saw that she stepped back. This is roughly right now. You're being selfish, and they need help. Her use of the word selfish was the last straw. A lifetime of repressed rage and bitterness abruptly solidified into a chilly, unambiguous goal. I went silently to my home office, picked up my laptop and a few papers off my desk, and then went back to the living room. Emily, would you like to discuss money? Let's have a conversation. I rotated the screen of my portfolio dashboard in her direction. Look at these figures. My stock options are these. I'll explain it to you in words you can comprehend. This is more valuable than James, your husband, will be in 3 years. That home of which you're so proud. If I wanted to, I could pay cash for it tomorrow. As she gazed at the numbers, her face turned white instead of crimson. I went on, bringing up papers such as my investment portfolio, my pay stubs, and the most recent offers I had gotten from rival businesses. But you're a tech worker. For the first time I could recall, she stumbled, you're just a programmer. Her voice was small. Emily, I'm now a senior development director. I was making something for myself while you and your wealthy husband were playing home. I also did it without treading on anyone else, unlike you. I clicked firmly to shut down my laptop. Without using any of my resources, I could assist Mom and Dad by covering their medical expenses. However, I won't. She murmured, you're being cruel. But I could see that she realized that her younger sister had outwitted her. No, it is terrible to stand by and do nothing while your sister is ignored her entire life. Without asking, cruel is stealing her inheritance. Cruel only shows up at her door when you're in need. I approached the door and pulled it open. Are we finished here? Don't return? Clutching her pricey purse like a shield, she stood there. She made one final attempt to say, you'll regret this, but her voice lacked the assurance it usually possessed. When they lose everything. My only regret is that I didn't cut you all off sooner. Emily, goodbye. I poured myself another glass of wine after she left, a $200 bottle I had been putting away for a special occasion, and this one felt like it, and then I went out to my balcony. In front of me, the city lights were a tapestry of freedom and opportunity. I felt totally free for the first time in my life. No more living in Emily's shadow, no more feeling guilty, no more looking for approval. My phone was inundated with notifications the following morning. Apparently, Emily had spent the night phoning every member of the family she could get through to tell them how I had changed, how prosperity had made me callous and uncaring, and how I was leaving the family when they needed me most. Uncle Greg wrote me a very long mail on karma and family responsibilities. In response, I shared a comprehensive folder with the family group chat. It included scanned copies of my inheritance documents, bank statements that revealed how my money was used for Emily's wedding, text messages from Emily stating that she would not assist with the medical bills despite her affluent lifestyle, and a breakdown of my current net worth that showed exactly how much I could contribute if I so desired. After that, the family conversation became very silent. Our cousin Angela was the only one to reply, "Holy, you actually did it, didn't you? In fact, you were successful on your own." I worked on my future plans over the course of the following few days. In another state, I accepted the promotion, which came with a bigger package of stock options and a substantial rise. The real estate agent believes my apartment will sell for a lot more than I'm asking for in this neighborhood, so I put it up for sale. I've already begun searching for real estate in my new city. This time, perhaps a penthouse. Emily sent me one last text last night, which said, "Mom's crying every night because of you." I commented, she had years to cry about how she treated me, and included a screenshot of my inheritance paperwork in my response. Her tears are no longer effective. After that, I blocked her number and all of my other family contacts. Closing the last chapter of a book I should have finished years ago was how it felt. You have been amazing during this journey, Reddit. Your encouragement made it clear to me that I wasn't alone in my feelings and that it's acceptable to put oneself above harmful family members. Your remarks served as a constant reminder of my decision-making process whenever I had second thoughts. Recently, I received a message questioning if achieving financial success was worth sacrificing my family. The truth is, though, that I didn't lose any. Folks who never treated me like family in the first place were folks I broke free from. My achievement just gave me the courage to refuse their treatment. It didn't change who I am. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who told me similar stories, gave me advice, or just confirmed how I felt. When I most needed strength, you gave it to me. I will begin looking for a home in my new city next week. A new life, a new career, and a new home. For the first time, I'm looking forward to the future without being constrained by obligations to my family. Aida. To some, perhaps. However, I've come to the crucial realization that sometimes being branded an asshole by toxic individuals is a sign that you're finally advocating for yourself. Reddit, thank you. I was able to discover my value and voice thanks to you. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.